Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto has perfect chakra control. Before I start, please support for more amazing content, and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Sessyruby and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. In hindsight, Naruto realized that his main problem throughout his life was control. Primarily chakra control. Born as an Uzumaki, Naruto naturally had an abnormally high chakra reserve, chakra being the combination of physical and mental energy. In addition to this, Naruto also had the unfortunate fate of becoming a Jinchuriki moments after his birth, being the last Uzumaki. And as only an Uzumaki could hold the massive force of chakra that is the nine-tailed fox, there was little choice but to seal the beast within him, which resulted in Naruto gaining the not inconsiderable chakra reserves of a Biju on top of his already large natural reserves. If that wasn't enough, the nature of the seal placed upon him also contributed to his fundamental difficulty in control, as the seal itself used Naruto's chakra to process and filter the chakra of the fox throughout the day, only to pump the purified chakra back into Naruto each morning as the sun rose. Meaning that any control he gained was compromised as his reserves grew day by day. As such, where other shinobi's chakra flowed throughout their bodies in a steady stream, Naruto's chakra was always in a state of flux. The defining principle of chakra control means that as chakra is used, not only control is gained but the chakra reserves themselves grow as the mind and body become more harmonized. Unfortunately for Naruto, his body was always out of balance with the enormity of his chakra reserves, as you would expect if you had a toddler with the power of a Chunin. The result of this was that by the time Naruto was 12 his reserves rivaled the Kage's, but his control was almost non-existent. Uzumaki children, due to their naturally higher than average reserves, traditionally started chakra training as soon as they were potty trained to make sure that their minds and bodies developed as one. Being the last of the Uzumakis meant there was no one to carry on this tradition with Naruto, and so when he finally learned the basics of control in the academy with the other children, he was drastically out of his depth. Where most his fellow academy students' chakra trickled through their systems, Naruto's chakra gushed, spilling out and around him forming an invisible chakra cloud. When Naruto was 8, his chakra reserves were so vast that his chakra signature blanketed much of the village. As such, to most of the chakra sensors living within the village, Naruto was background noise. Incidentally, this was the secret to how Naruto managed to escape from Jonin and Umbu after completing his pranks. To most sensors it was like trying to find an open tap at the bottom of a lake. Despite popular belief, even Iruka-sensei could not sense Naruto. The reason he could always find Naruto when others could not was due to his own history as a prankster. Iruka would simply trace the chase through the village, then head to the nearest relatively safe hiding spot, and there Naruto would be. Later in life, this chakra cloud would become as even greater asset as no one could pinpoint his location through his chakra unless he was using it. Where other shinobi hid their presence by making their reserves as small as possible, Naruto simply blanketed the whole region. Due to his underwhelming physical appearance, enemy shinobi assumed the chakra cloud to be a product of the Jonin or Sannin that accompanied him whenever he left the village, and so he remained largely underestimated for much of his life. Having large chakra reserves by itself is no great problem as it increases stamina, fighting power, and accelerates healing exponentially. However, without control it could also have a really detrimental effect upon the mental and physical development of a young person, especially if the body itself is neglected. Because of his status as a Jinchuriki, Naruto did not receive the best upbringing. Sure, he received the basics of survival, but that was all he received. As such, his mind and body did not develop in balance with his chakra growth. Chakra need an outlet, it cannot simply dissipate as it wants to be used. Some of his chakra went to the fox to replenish that lost in the sealing process, and some went to maintaining his own body as his healing factor tried to counterbalance the effects of malnutrition. But that still left a large amount of chakra constantly circulating through Naruto's small body. This excess chakra manifested in hyperactive behavior and an overloaded thinking process. As a result of this, by the age of 6 it was physically impossible for Naruto to stay still. When forced to try as a punishment for bad behavior, he would actually vibrate with suppressed energy. His mind, much like his body, was also in a state of constant motion, flitting from one thought to the next, so that his attention span ended up as that of a goldfish. It was only when his mind and body worked as one that he could focus, and only then by repeating the same action to exhaustion, which explains his love of training, as it not only fulfilled a physical need but allowed his mind to rest. As such, the academy was possibly the worst learning environment for Naruto, as he was a kinetic learner, and the stagnant environment of the academy caused his development to atrophy. It was only when he learned the shadow clone technique that Naruto's development as a ninja could finally begin, as splitting his chakra amongst the clones balanced out his energies and allowed his mind to slow down enough that he could retain knowledge. Naruto never noticed the memory transference that was a byproduct of the shadow clone jutsu, not from any lack of real intelligence but simply as an indication of the normal state of Naruto's mind. The hyperactive nature of Naruto's thinking process meant that he often thought multiple thoughts all at once, as his chakra-enhanced mind was in an almost constant overload of information as he examined each idea from multiple angles. A byproduct of this meant that Naruto was incapable of sustained anger, as he could see all points of view at once, but it also meant that he found it difficult to focus as his mind constantly went off on tangents of stray thought. But in situations of survival, when adrenaline coursed through his veins, it was this ability to absorb vast amounts of data all at once that resulted in his often startlingly ingenious plans, especially after he could split the responsibility of response to stimuli amongst his shadow clones. Unfortunately, as Naruto's chakra-induced hyperactivity was present almost from the time he learned to walk, no one in the village noticed why he acted like he did, and so it wasn't until Naruto's training journey with Jiraiya and the constant chakra control exercises and usage that this entailed that Naruto's true personality and potential could be realized as his mind and body finally became somewhat balanced. Learning the Rasengan was perhaps the best thing that could have happened for Naruto's development as a ninja. The chakra-heavy technique not only used up a large quantity of the excess chakra circulating through his body, but the very nature of the technique as a highly advanced chakra control technique was possibly the only control technique that could have made a dent in his vast reserves, as it dealt with the physical manipulation of chakra energy. This technique in conjunction with the shadow clone technique gave Naruto the relative control of an academy student, and finally allowed Naruto to show the serious and focused shinobi he was always capable of becoming. Yes, Naruto's main problem growing up was chakra control. Perhaps now that he found himself inexplicably 5 years old again he might finally be able to achieve it. Chapter 1. It took almost 2 months for Naruto to fully accept the situation he found himself in. At first he thought himself to be the victim of an elaborate genjutsu, as the last thing he remembered was fighting against Madara alongside Kakashi-sensei. The next thing he knew he was awakening to his old room at the orphanage, unable to access his chakra or mindscape and stuck in a body weak from lack of food and exercise. Only after he had tried to use pain, his only resort as his chakra was inaccessible to him, a number of times to break the genjutsu with no result, and a fair amount of time had passed with no change, did Naruto finally accept that he had somehow regressed to his 5-year-old existence. He knew he was 5 as he recognized one of the orphans playing in the yard below his window as a girl who had entered the orphanage soon after his 5th birthday on the death of her grandmother, her only surviving relative. Finding himself in such a weak and vulnerable body almost drove Naruto to despair, as feelings of helplessness almost overwhelmed him. Until one night when he dreamt of the 3 most influential teachers of his life standing around his bed, silently telling him to not give up but to keep moving. It was then that he realized that if he was in fact in the past, then he had a chance. A chance to save these men, his Jiji the Hokage, his master Jiraiya and his team leader Kakashi lost just moments before he himself was hit. At this point in time they still lived and the future was salvageable. This time I will be better, I will be stronger, vowed Naruto to himself. This time I will protect everyone, believe it. The orphanage Naruto spent the first 6 years of his life in was typical of a village recovering from near annihilation. The necessities for survival were provided but in short supply. The Sandaime, being an intelligent if misguided man, realized after the 3rd attempt on Naruto's young life that the people were not quite rational directly after the attack of the 9-tailed fox, and that the care of one Naruto Uzumaki would have to be spelled out most strongly for it to occur. Thus he created his famous law to protect Naruto from the hatred of his peers, and also the Orphans Act, in which the basic standard of care for orphans was stipulated. The caretakers made sure to carry out the letter of the law, in fear of the repercussions if they did not, but only the letter of the law. As stated in the act, orphans were to receive 3 meals a day, though the size of the portions was not stipulated, and so Naruto received 3 meals a day. It was not the carer's fault that the standard serving was so small and that there was never enough for Naruto to receive seconds, Naruto being the last alphabetically to be served. The act stated that orphans were to be washed daily, and so Naruto received his bath with the other orphans. It was not the fault of the carers that after 40 children were washed that the bath water would be only lukewarm at best when he did so, and not at all clean. As stated in the act, orphans were to be housed in clean rooms with at least 1 blanket each, and so Naruto slept in a clean room each night. It was not the fault of the carers that due to overcrowding in the dorms, Naruto was consigned to a disused supply room. Nor was it the carers' fault that the blankets were thin with only enough for all the children, bar Naruto, to receive 2 each. Thus Naruto's experience at the orphanage was that of unrelenting loneliness, hunger, and cold. He received enough of the basics to survive but not to thrive. As he was left alone for much of the time, Naruto took twice as long as the other orphans to learn to talk and quickly fell behind in the group reading lessons as no one would answer his questions. This severely retarded his development the first time around, but now with his new knowledge, this negligence became a blessing as no one would notice what he did in the privacy of his room. First things first, he thought to himself, I need to meditate. There's not much I can do to improve my body just yet until I can access some more food. But as Jiraiya once said, chakra is a combination of mind and physical power, so if I improve my mind it should help to balance my system and let me access my chakra. Naruto had forgotten how much easier it was to think at this age. Most of his chakra was tied up with the still recovering fox and with countering the effects of malnutrition on his body, and so the hyperactive thought processes of his latter life were yet to develop. The first time around Naruto was too busy feeling miserable to notice, but his senses were truly amazing. He could hear the matron down in the kitchen, 2 floors below. He could clearly see the treetops outside the village wall over 5 kilometers away, and could literally smell the emotions of those around him. Naruto had always had great senses, either because of his large chakra reserves or because of the fox's presence, but over time had unconsciously blocked them out. Much like a person living beside a train track would over time not even hear the train, Naruto's senses were greatly reduced through disuse and lack of training. Only through constant training, like that received by the Inuzukas, would such senses be usable later in life, training that Naruto never received. On their 3-year training trip, Jiraiya had attempted to retrain Naruto to use his enhanced senses to some degree. I had no idea how much I had lost, thought Naruto as he stared out the window reveling in his ability to see so far and hear so much. Thank goodness I remembered the training techniques Ero-san taught me for retaining my senses. Turning away from the window at last, Naruto settled himself on the floor at the end of his bed with his legs folded. He laid his hands on his knees, palms up, and closed his eyes. Breathing deeply, Naruto reached deep inside himself with his mind searching for the wellspring of power residing just behind his navel. Naruto breathed out as he traced the swirling vortex, mentally following its pathway through his body's chakra network. This was the simplest and most calming of all chakra exercises, as the mind is soothed by the gentle flow of energy. Fire monks often use this exercise to clear their minds upon awakening, and indeed it was they that taught it to Naruto. Naruto breathed in and out, gently soothed by the feeling of peace that flowed through his mind. 6 months of this and I should be ready for the next exercise, he thought. There's no need to rush, as not much will be happening for a while and my body is not developed enough yet for much else. I need to be ready in a year's time though. I'll need to build up as much strength as I can to survive when I'm thrown out. On the night of Naruto's 6th birthday, a mob of drunken villagers had attacked the orphanage the first time around. For the first few years of Naruto's life his location had been kept secret, and it was thought by most villagers that he had been secluded away from Konoha. But on the night of the 6th Remembrance Festival, a tipsy orphanage worker has let his location slip whilst drinking in a local bar. The resulting mob was quickly turned away by ANBU, but not before they had set fire to the orphanage's front gate. The matron of the orphanage was justifiably upset but unprofessionally took it out on Naruto, whose increasingly hyperactive behavior had made him more difficult to control. Naruto had found himself thrown out through the orphanage's back gate the next morning with little more than the clothes on his back. Luckily the weather had been mild enough that sleeping outside had been no real hardship, but the fear of being so vulnerable, and the constant hunger had almost broken him. Until that is he had miraculously happened upon the ramen stand of Tochi Ichiraku and his daughter, who had brought his plight to the attention of the Hokage, resulting in Naruto receiving his own apartment and monthly orphan stipend on which to survive. It will be different this time, I will be ready. Chapter 2. A ninja must do what they can in the time that they have. This was the lesson Naruto learned on his very first C-rank mission. Unlike in Wave, where they had only a matter of days to train before the return of Zabuza, Naruto had literally years in which to improve himself before anything of significance was to occur. Though he had plenty of time, the body in which he found himself seriously inhibited what he could do. For the last 5 years Naruto's existence in the orphanage had been largely sedentary in nature. A typical day for Naruto began at dawn when he awoke thanks to his natural morning chakra surge that would awaken him every morning for most of his childhood. It was not until the heavy usage of chakra during training of his teenage years that he was able to sleep in. He would then spend the morning huddled by his window, staring over the orphanage wall, watching as Konoha awoke. At 9 every morning he was finally let out of his room by a caretaker. Naruto would wash after all the other children in the then cold water, then head into the eating hall where he was served firsts. First consisted of 1 rice ball and a cup of miso soup. The children would then line up for seconds, consisting of another rice ball, a small grilled fish and another larger cup of miso soup. Though Naruto always joined the line for seconds, there was never enough for him. After breakfast the children had lessons on how to read and write and look after themselves, which all orphans were required to receive by law. Naruto was ignored more often than not during these lessons and left alone to learn as he could. The first time around Naruto had managed to pick up some of these skills, but it was not until his travels with Jiraiya, when he was required to help edit the great works of literature, that he managed to acquire what most would call a functional level of literacy. Lunch was served after lessons, once again small servings in 2 rounds. Then the children would be released out into the yard for their hour of mandatory outside playtime as stipulated in the Orphans Act. The other children were allowed to play until dinner time, but Naruto would invariably be punished after the first hour was up, usually for trying to approach the other children to play, or on one memorable occasion simply for breathing. Naruto would then be locked in his room for the rest of the evening. The only interruption to this time would be when his dinner was delivered, consisting of a rice ball, a small vegetable croquet, and another cup of miso soup. Naruto resigned himself to a continuation of this routine, as he could see no real way that he could change it in his current powerless state. Instead he used his time to prepare himself as best he could for the trials ahead, by practicing his chakra control exercises and starting to train his body. He wanted to build up his stamina and strength for when he would be out on his own. Over the last 6 months Naruto had used the early morning hours to meditate. At first only observing his chakra network, but then gradually over time he began to exert his will upon it, calling his chakra to concentrate in various parts of his body such as his hands and his feet. At last he judged that his control was enough to begin the most basic of chakra exercises taught to academy students, the leaf exercise. The idea of this exercise being to hold a leaf upon the forehead with only the force of the student's chakra. Too much chakra and the leaf would be blasted across the room, too little and the leaf would simply fall off. When Naruto had first attempted this exercise at the academy, he could not complete it as his lowest level of possible chakra use at the time would reduce the leaf to dust with each attempt. At the age of 5.5, however, his reserves were such that he could at last learn this most basic of ninja skills. Naruto took 2 months to master holding the leaf upon his forehead, practicing each day when locked in his room. He then learned to hold the leaf on other parts of his body so that he could practice the exercise continuously by hiding leaves beneath his clothes. Within a couple of weeks he constantly had at least 10 leaves slowly circling his torso beneath his shirt as he manipulated his chakra to keep the leaves not only in place but also in constant motion. He made a game of racing the leaves, seeing which one he could make circle his body the fastest. This has the advantage of training his mind not only to use chakra but also to multitask. It also helped relieve the relentless boredom he felt during this time. In the afternoons, Naruto would spend time trying to build his body with push-ups, sit-ups and flexibility exercises. Whilst exercising he would speak aloud, exercising his disused throat and facial muscles, as it had taken another year originally for him to start speaking in sentences. He would recite passages from the tale of the Gutsy Ninja, which he had memorized during his travels with Jiraiya, or to freak out his carers when he sensed them near he would recite passages from Ika he had learnt whilst editing the series. He was still a prankster at heart after all. The only problem with this exercise was though his chakra reserves were enough to keep him relatively healthy considering the small amount of food he was given, it was not enough to encourage the growth of muscle and bone strength. For his physical exercises to produce any real benefit he would need more food, and for this he fell back onto his most hidden of skills, his stealth. Naruto of the Kill Me bright orange suit was not widely known for his stealth, but years of running and hiding from drunks and later Jonin and Anbu had raised his levels of stealth to an amazing degree. When he wanted to, Naruto could virtually make himself invisible, such as when he painted the Hokage mountain in the middle of the day without being caught until it was complete, or when he wanted to spy on Lady Tsunade. It was only when he had received the knowledge that he was after that she was ever able to detect his presence. No, despite popular opinion, Naruto was very good at remaining undetected, and it was this skill that he employed over the next 6 months to sneak into the kitchens of the orphanage to obtain much-needed sustenance. Making sure to always leave no trace of his actions, relocking every lock so that no suspicion could fall upon him. Luckily his clothing was second-hand and 3 sizes too big so no one took notice of any change in his physique. While he was at it, Naruto also began making preparations for the future. 3 months before his 6th birthday, he began gathering the supplies he would need to survive on his own and to secret them in a hole he dug beneath a large tree by the orphanage's back gate. Naruto hoped that his improved behavior and less hyperactive personality might allow him to stay within the orphanage this time around, but the steely glare that he often caught on the matron's face when she looked at him kept him realistic in his outlook. On the morning after his 6th birthday his fears were realized and once again he was out on his own. Chapter 3. Naruto remembered this time as a mixture of overwhelming fear and hunger. Having never stepped foot outside of the orphanage walls before, Konoha proved to be a confusing and dangerous place for the relatively sheltered 6-year-old. Days spent darting from alleyway to alleyway in search of food was bad enough, but the nights without adequate shelter left him particularly vulnerable. Secure sleeping areas were hard to find, and if he found himself in the wrong neighborhood after dark, he often found himself dodging stray dogs and drunken men intent on causing harm. Naruto knew that if he was to survive he would need to first find a secure base. Years ago, when he was in the academy, he had found an abandoned training field at the far end of the Nara clan estate. It was on the other side of the village from the public training grounds, so safe enough from surprise visits from other shinobi in search of training space, and had obviously lain abandoned for a number of years as it was overgrown and the training posts half-rotted. It was disused primarily as the Naras were far too lazy to walk that far just to train and was too near the Nara Deer Preserve for too much noise to be tolerated. Naruto had used it to practice his kunai throwing when he was ejected from the public training areas. For whatever reason, perhaps because they were too lazy or intelligent to give in to hate, the Nara shinobi had always been the most tolerant of Naruto's presence growing up. As such, Naruto deemed that the training ground of his childhood would make the perfect base in which to live until he was able to make his situation known to the Hokage. Not only was it on the relatively safe lands of the Nara clan estate, but it also had its own water supply in the form of a small stream and a sheltered area in which he could sleep in the form of a small cave in the base of a hill to the rear of the training grounds. Perfect, he thought to himself as he stealthily gathered his supplies from the hole he had dug at the base of a tree at the orphanage's back gate. Over the last 2 weeks Naruto had managed to gather a thin blanket from the laundry as well as a kitchen knife, flint and steel for making fire and a small pot from the kitchen. He had waited till just before his birthday so that the items would not be missed in the chaos caused by the festival preparations. Not enough for a comfortable existence, but at least this should help me survive the next 2 months or so. He wrapped his supplies up in the blanket and made his way into the village, making sure to stay in the shadows. Naruto had been thrown out in the early hours of the morning, so luckily there were not too many people about, but he still wanted to be careful. I can gather food from the forest this time at least instead of eating out of trash cans. Thanks to the survival training we received at the academy, I know what's safe to eat and what to avoid. Naruto thought contentedly. I shouldn't get too hungry. I can make a fire with my flint and steel and I have a blanket. All in all, it shouldn't be too bad, and I could even train at the training grounds. Naruto slid into an alley and made his way to the other end, being careful of the rubbish piled around him. He waited for the villagers to pass before darting across the road to another alley. He smiled as he noticed the change in the building quality as he made his way into the clan area of the village. The houses here were much older and of better quality, most hidden behind large fenced areas that held whole estates of clan buildings and training areas. The Nara estates he was heading towards were on the edge of the clan area on the opposite side to the Inuzuka clan and beside the Akimichi clan, whose farmlands bordered the Nara Deer Preserve on one side. The Nara, a clan of shadow technique users, kept deer as their main source of income, and as such their estate was the largest and backed onto the surrounding forest. The training field that Naruto was heading towards was in a forgotten corner of the estate, quite far for a 6-year-old to travel each day into the village, but at least it was a safe place to sleep at night. And it will help me to build up stamina to travel so far each day, Naruto affirmed to himself. When Naruto finally arrived at the training ground, he was pleased to find it just as he remembered. The grounds comprised of a large natural clearing perhaps 25 meters in diameter with a small stream running through one end and a small hill with a naturally formed cave, or perhaps overhand would be a more appropriate word, at the other end. A large circular area had been cleared and compacted in the center so that no grass could grow in it, and to one side of this there were 3 training posts embedded into the ground, one of which had come loose and so tilted drunkenly to the side. Naruto quickly set about setting his new home to rights. Setting his bundle down, he unwrapped his thin blanket and shook out the dirt from when it was buried and hung it over a nearby bush to dry any lingering dampness. Grabbing a fallen branch, he made his way over to the overhang and proceeded to sweep out the area of any debris, then cleared the space of any rocks. Using the rocks, he made a small fire pit at the front of the overhang to one side, then stood up and dusted his hands in satisfaction. Taking his small kitchen knife, he then made his way down to the stream and began to gather armfuls of reeds from the stream bank, laying them down in the middle of the training area to dry in the sun. He then repeated the process with the tall grasses growing around the edge of the training area. By this time Naruto was beginning to feel quite peckish, and so decided to see what he could forage up as he searched for firewood. Luckily, as it was early autumn, the forest was literally bursting with nuts, berries and edible mushrooms. After gathering enough firewood to last the night, Naruto sat himself down in the sun and helped himself to the bounty he had managed to gather. If I remember correctly, it took quite a while for the old man to hear that I had been thrown out of the orphanage last time, though it might have only felt like a long time because I was so damn scared and hungry all the time, he mused to himself. Either way, I'll have to see what I can do to speed up the process, as I don't fancy being out here during the winter months even if it is quite pleasant right now. After his meal, Naruto decided to set up some simple traps to catch game and built a fish trap at one end of the stream, knowing that this was the simplest way for him to hunt, given his current skill level. By the time he had finished, it was late afternoon, and time to set up for the night. Gathering the now dry reeds, Naruto wove a basic sleeping mat which he then lined with the dry grass, topping the whole thing with his blanket folded in half so that he could sleep between the layers. He then set off to check his traps and forage once again for something to eat. Naruto was in luck. Though his traps were empty of any game, he had managed to capture 3 small fish in his fish trap. Carrying his catch back to camp wrapped in some leaves with the nuts and mushrooms he had also managed to acquire carried in his small pot, Naruto felt quite pleased with himself. Once back at camp, he set about making a fire in his fire pit and making a simple fish and mushroom stew for dinner. Lying contentedly on his bed a few hours later, with a full belly for once in over a year, staring up at the stars, Naruto slid blissfully into a deep sleep. Time skip 1 month. Waking up to birdsong is quite a nice way to start the day, Naruto thought contentedly as he stretched in the morning sun just outside his sleeping hour. He then headed over to the small stream across the training ground to wash. Naruto had no problem with bathing in the cold water. By the time it was his turn to bath at the orphanage, it was often not much warmer than this forest stream after all. Cold water baths were a norm in Naruto's young life, for even when he eventually moved into his apartment, the hot water system to his rooms mysteriously broke on the first day, and so he had never experienced a hot bath in his youth. He had observed people bathing in hot water at the local public baths but had assumed this to be a luxury reserved for onsens to which he was not welcome to enter. It was not till his first trip outside the village that he had realized that this was not the case. I'll have to obtain a couple of large pots to heat water in when I get my apartment, he thought as he briskly washed his face and chest in the cold, clear water. He turned bare-chested so that the warm morning sun could dry him and walked to some nearby bushes growing on the edge of the training area that were heavy with ripe berries. If there was ever a good time to be homeless on Konoha, it was definitely this time of the year, when the forest bushes were ripe and the nights were mild enough that a small fire and a thin blanket were enough to make them comfortable. But I still don't want to be out here in a couple of months' time when winter sets in, and if all goes to plan I won't need to, Naruto said to himself as he finished his last berry. Naruto had taken to talking aloud to himself to make sure he still could. After not talking to anyone for over a year, he needed to train himself to speak aloud once more, and he also had to work through his childlike pronunciation as his throat and neck muscles were still weak from disuse. Right. Time for morning training. He cheered as he pumped his small fist in the air. Naruto began with some simple stretches before he started to jog around the edge of the training grounds. After completing 10 laps, he dropped to the ground in the middle of the space and did 10 sets of push-ups, sit-ups, and leg raises. He then gathered up some small stones from a prearranged pile and threw them at the training post to begin training his eye and arms for target practice, from various distances and stances for an hour. This was the training regime Naruto had thought of to help build up his strength and stamina in the first 2 weeks of his stay in the forest, and was to be completed at least twice a day. Of course, it was not as strenuous as his past/future training exercises, as it was not as long and did not use weights, but he was physically only 6 after all. Even though Naruto wanted to quickly acquire his apartment once more, as it would serve as a safe and secure place to train, he did take 2 weeks to simply be and try and gain as much strength as possible. After awakening that first morning, he had realized just how stressed he had been over the past year, as he had tried to get stronger all whilst trying not to get noticed and being unable to talk to anyone. 2 weeks of nothing but nature, eating and simple exercise was needed to recharge his mental reserves before he once again was forced to head back into the village. After finishing his morning physical exercises, Naruto wiped the sweat from his body with his shirt and then settled down with his back against the middle training post to meditate. He closed his eyes and breathed in, taking in the world around him. He became aware of the trees first, to the breeze ruffling the leaves overhead. Then he became aware of the animals returning to the area after being scared away by his earlier activity. The rabbit to his left at the edge of the field, the birds flying overhead, and the deer further into the forest itself moving along their rambling pathways. Breathing out, he became aware of the life force around him, the nature chakra present in everything from the animals to the plants, to even the ground beneath him. It was this nature chakra that he had learned to utilize in his sage mode, though he knew it was much too dangerous for him to attempt to manipulate with his underdeveloped 6-year-old chakra network. He did not want to become fossilized. Though Naruto never underestimated his abilities, it had taken many years for him to realize his own limitations. Through his sage training and his experience at the Waterfall of Truth, he had gained a better understanding of himself, his strengths and his weaknesses. The obnoxious overconfidence of his youth had primarily been a product of his youthful ignorance and an unconscious rejection of the limitations placed upon him by others, and was eventually overcome by training and experience. Naruto breathed in again and turned his focus from the external world to the internal and focused on the warm glow of his own chakra swirling just beneath his skin. After a year of daily chakra meditation, Naruto had managed to manipulate his chakra in such a way that it now not only ran smoothly through his chakra network but also constantly saturated his bones, muscles and internal organs, in such a way that it was easily accessible. He mentally sank down into the glowing energy swirling just beneath his belly button, allowing his mind to become buoyant as it was passively carried throughout his body like a leaf in a stream. His mind flew up along his spine, swirling around his heart and lungs before shooting up into his brain, then flowing down each arm in turn, then up again and down his sides to his hips and then down each leg, before flowing back into the pool of chakra at his middle. Once Naruto felt he had a complete grasp of the natural flow of his chakra, he slowly began to exert his will upon it. He teased out a tendril of chakra from the main flow and directed it to pool in the palm of his right hand. Bringing his 2 hands together in a prayer gesture, Naruto began to pass a pulse of chakra between them. When the flow was stable and a good rhythm had been achieved, Naruto began to slowly separate his hands whilst continuing to toss the chakra pulse from one hand to the next, seeing how far he could separate them before the pulse fizzled out. This physical manifestation of chakra was the product of the last year's worth of chakra meditation. It served as both a chakra control exercise and as a means to expel the excess chakra that already was beginning to build up in his small body. For 20 minutes Naruto concentrated on tossing his ball of chakra, keeping the flow constant and stable, before he allowed his mind to wander. Manipulating chakra whilst distracted was an important skill for any ninja to learn and practice, as it prepared them for armed conflict where a ninja routinely had to do so, with much higher levels of chakra and more deadly distractions. There was just so much that Naruto had to do, though he tried to concentrate only on what he could accomplish right now. He could not help but think of what needed to be accomplished over the coming years. His immediate concern was of course his own survival, him being extremely vulnerable in his current state. Only once his housing situation and education was stabilized would Naruto be free to concern himself with the fate of his friends. I won't be able to contact Kurama for at least another couple of years, as his chakra system didn't really recover from his sealing until I was 8 or so, mused Naruto. Once I gain my apartment, I must make sure to visit the old man Hokage as much as possible and try to befriend Sasuke before his family is killed. That shouldn't happen until the first week of the academy, so I have a few years at least. But I don't know the exact day it happened, and it might be hard to find out. Naruto breathed in, and his expression became determined as he expelled his chakra pulse into the air and said, "But I will save him." Believe it. Standing up, Naruto stretched and made ready to head into the village for the day. Over the last 2 weeks Naruto had made his way through the village, mostly moving through the alleyways, trying to unobtrusively make his presence known. He had scavenged through the village's dumpsters looking for anything usable for his survival, and thus hinting at his homeless state. Konoha had a strict policy against homelessness as it was a security risk. The villagers and shinobi were required to report any such to the proper authorities, who would then find housing and gainful employment for the homeless person. There were always jobs in a ninja village such as weapons sharpening, or even spare ranks, and so no excuse for unemployment which could only lead to temptation from foreign spies. The reason that Naruto managed to remain homeless for so long last time was that the villagers knew who he was and enjoyed watching him trying to survive in squalor, as it justified their belief that he was just an animal. It also allowed them easy access for when they wanted to release their frustration by throwing rocks and rotten food at him on the pretext of moving him away from their dustbins. The reason Naruto was unobtrusively making his presence known was that he was never sure if the Ichiraku's charity had been extended, as his homeless status was widely known, or if it was because of a momentary whim, but it was better to be safe than sorry. Today, though, his patience should have its reward, as it was time to implement his plan and reacquaint himself with his first family, the Ichirakus, and his first love, ramen. Naruto's love of ramen was legendary amongst those that knew him and was a product of genetics, and the fact that it was the first meal served to him both warm and with genuine kindness. By moving from alleyway to alleyway, Naruto navigated his way across the village to just behind the Ichiraku ramen stand, which was situated between the main training grounds and the academy. The Ichiraku dumpsters had never been a good source of food, as the old man was very careful not to waste supplies and the customers very rarely left anything to be thrown out. But that was not the point of today's raid. Naruto raised up the lid of the dumpster with a lack of his usual caution, allowing the lid to clang against the back wall of the ramen stand. He leaned half his body into the bin and began to root around as he waited. "Who's there?" called out the deep, gruff voice of Tsuchi Ichiraku from the back doorway. Naruto raised his head and assumed an expression of fright as he looked up to see old man Ichiraku. "What are you doing?" the man asked as he walked towards the dumpster. Naruto jumped back in seeming panic and whimpered, "I meant no harm. I was only looking for something to eat." "I'm sorry." He had turned to dash away when a large hand clamped down on his shoulder, causing him to flinch and freeze in place. "No need for that," said the old man, kindly taking in Naruto's small size and ragged clothing. "Come inside, I'll make you something better than what can be found in there," gently turning the small boy to face him. "But I have no money," disclaimed Naruto. "No problem," said the old man as he led Naruto through the back door. "I've got plenty of bowls in the back in need of a good scrub in exchange." Naruto smiled as he walked inside, already anticipating the first slippery mouthful. His first taste of his true love in over a year. Chapter 4. The Sandaime smiled wearily as he watched the small, dirty, little boy dressed in rags excitedly exclaim over his new accommodation. "Oh Minato, how we have failed you," sighed the Hokage silently as he waited for the hyperactive little boy to calm down. It was not a very large or fancy apartment, built as emergency accommodation after the QB attack. It could best be described as Spartan at best, and yet its new owner clearly loved it. Though small for his age, Naruto is big in personality, mused the old man fondly as he watched the boy bounce from wall to wall. They had met in person for the first time the day before. Much to his dismay, the Hokage had allowed himself to rely on the reports of those trusted with Naruto's care for reports on the boy's development, as he had been too busy to make time for him. And we all know how well that turned out, he thought in self-disgust. The Sandaime had received a message from Tsuchi Ichiraku, a ramen vendor and retired ninja he had known for many years, stating that he had someone at his stand that the Hokage had to meet urgently as a matter of village security. The Hokage was justifiably surprised by the fact that this mysterious person was in fact young Naruto, whom he was assured was still living at the East Gate orphanage. He was outraged to find out that this was not the case, and that this young child had been left to live on the streets for the last month, scavenging from the villages refused to survive. The fact that this situation had remained unreported in a ninja village such as Konoha was cause for great concern for the Hokage. Surprised at first by Naruto's small size, his heart had instantly been captured by the boy's innocently wary blue eyes, so much like his dear old friends. "Hey old man?" asked Naruto, recalling the Hokage to the present. "Are you sure I can have all this to myself?" "Yes, Naruto," chuckled the Hokage, patting him on the head. "It's all yours. I will have someone deliver food to you till you're old enough to handle grocery money yourself." "Okay, thanks old man," exclaimed Naruto, loudly grinning from ear to ear. Naruto would of course have preferred to have had the money, but who would trust a 6-year-old to handle his own finances? "There are clothes in your room, Naruto. Why don't you wash up while I go and do some work, and I'll come back in an hour or so to take you out for dinner?" asked the Hokage. "Great!" exclaimed Naruto as he dashed off to his room. The smile fell from the old man's face as he turned to the door and ordered his Anbu to assemble in his office. "A watch will need to be organized," mused the Hokage. "He cannot be allowed to fall off the radar again. Anything could have happened to the boy." And with that thought he and his escort shushened away. Meanwhile Naruto at that moment was lost in nostalgia. "Wow, I haven't seen this for a few years," thought Naruto fondly as he ran his hand gently over the end of his bed. Not since the complex was destroyed in the pain attack. Naruto's apartment building was located on the edge of the academy complex, built as emergency housing for homeless ninja after the QB attack. His apartment was on the top floor of the apartment building furthest from the stairs, making it easy for the ANBU team assigned to guard him to do so. The apartment itself was small, being comprised of a combined living area and kitchenette, a small bathroom and one bedroom. It was sparsely furnished, but quite comfortable. The front door opened onto a long room, approximately 3 meters by 6 meters, with 2 windows flanking the door and 2 doors on the opposite wall leading to the bedroom and bathroom. To the right was the sitting area. It had a 2-seater brown couch pushed up against the wall with a side table at each end and a red fire symbol wall hanging above it. In front of the couch was a round beige rug with green trimming and a large green leaf symbol in the center, and against the back wall was 2 large bookcases on either side of the bedroom door. To the left of the front door was Naruto's kitchen, comprising of a sink under the window with a cupboard underneath, a small worktop with 2 more cupboards underneath along the side wall with 2 upper cupboards above it, a small gas range, a small refrigerator by the door to the bathroom, and a rubbish bin just by the front door. In the middle of the space was a small 4-seater table and chairs. His bedroom was even more sparsely furnished with only a single bed, a side table, small wardrobe, and a chest of drawers at which Naruto now stood. "Ah, I remember this," he exclaimed happily as he pulled out a white t-shirt with the fire symbol on the front and a pair of orange cargo shorts. "This was my uniform for the first few years of the academy before I outgrew it and needed to buy my own outfits. Too bad I'll only be able to buy that bright orange jumpsuit though. I would really like to get something in black and orange like Ero-san got for me if I could," Naruto said wistfully to himself as he moved toward the bathroom to wash up. It may not have been the most fancy of places, but the apartment was now home once again, and with a more stable base of operations, Naruto was now free to focus fully on his training to get stronger. His immediate goal was to build up his body strength in preparation for the chakra influx he will experience on his 8th birthday when the Kyuubi would begin to awaken. He hoped that by improving his mind and body he could more easily balance out the sudden surge in chakra levels that had messed him up so much the first time, resulting in his poor grades at the academy and his birth as Konoha's prankster king. Chakra being the combination of physical and spiritual power, it stood to reason that by strengthening his mind and body he would achieve balance and control of his chakra. Or at least that's what he hoped. He also needed to work on his muscle memory. Naruto knew intellectually how to do many things, but he would need to train his body if he wanted to be able to do them instinctively as he had before. This meant hours of repetitive training not only for his taijutsu but also for such things as handwriting, hand seals, and senses training, such as sight and hearing. After all, to accurately create and control any jutsu, a ninja needed both chakra control and the hand seals that directed the jutsu. Clumsy hand movements could result in a weak technique, or even failure of execution. Now that he had a relatively private space away from prying eyes, Naruto could start work on training this essential fine motor skill. After a quick wash, Naruto dressed himself and decided to check what he had available in his new apartment. Kakashi-sensei had always emphasized the need to inventory available resources when entering any new situation. His bedroom contained 1 bed with a pillow, sheets, and 2 blankets, with a further spare blanket in the wardrobe as well as a couple of towels and a small gray jacket. In the chest of drawers on the wall facing the bed he found 4 more white t-shirts and 4 pairs of orange cargo shorts in addition to what he now wore, as well as enough underwear to last a week. By the bedroom door he found a pair of child-sized, blue ninja sandals. The oversized nature of all these garments meant they should last him for a while. In the bathroom he had 5 packets of soap and 2 bottles of shampoo, 2 tubes of toothpaste, a toothbrush, and 1 hairbrush in the cupboard beneath the sink, as well as a small first aid kit. "Well, at least I have enough toiletries to last a while," he said to himself. The bookcase nearest the couch was empty, waiting for Naruto to fill it with training scrolls and academy books, but the bookcase between the 2 doors was half filled with scrolls and books. At head height Naruto found a set of maths, reading and writing primers, as well as a beginner's cookbook and a scroll detailing basic home maintenance such as cleaning techniques and reminders to turn of taps and lights before leaving the apartment. "Too bad I couldn't use these last time, they would have been handy." On 2 shelves below the books, Naruto found reams of paper, blank scrolls, a box of pencils, and a beginner's calligraphy set. In the kitchen Naruto found some basic cleaning products and a bucket below the sink, as well as a step stool so that he could reach the taps. The next cupboard contained a set of 4 plates, bowls, and cups, and in the drawer above Naruto found 4 sets of chopsticks, 4 spoons, and a set of cooking utensils. In the last lower cupboard he found a small kettle, a wok, and 3 cooking pots of various sizes, of which only the kettle had been used in his previous life. Naruto then dragged over a chair so that he could reach the upper cabinets. The top shelf of the first cabinet was packed solid with ration bars of various flavors, and the lower shelf with various varieties of cereal. Naruto let out a loud whoop as he opened the second cabinet to find it chock full of instant ramen cups, premium brand. "I haven't had some of those flavors for a while," thought Naruto as he hopped down, "but I wish there was a little more variety, like maybe some rice or canned foods. Oh well, I'll just have to collect my own food from the forest." Whilst true that Naruto's early diet consisted almost entirely of ramen, leading to his severe lack of growth the first time around, and though he did in fact love ramen, instant ramen he could take or leave. It was not till Naruto's travels with Jiraiya that he was able to sample the many other foods on offer and obtain the nutrients that his starving body craved, leading to his late growth spurt that surprised so many on his return. For much of his childhood instant ramen was his only option owing to his inability to cook, and as it was the only thing sold to him, albeit at an inflated price, that was guaranteed not to be spoilt, or just past its use-by date. Last but not least, Naruto moved to examine the contents of his small fridge and was pleasantly surprised to see it contain not only milk but also bottled juice, meat and a selection of fresh vegetables. Of course, thought Naruto, whoever stoked the apartment mustn't have known it was for me. Well, at least I have something decent to eat for the next few days. Naruto looked at the time on the clock above the stove, and saw that he still had half an hour or so till the Hokage was due back. He walked over to the bookcase and grabbed a pencil from the box and a couple of pieces of paper and sat down at the table to practice his handwriting while he waited for the Hokage to arrive. Once I get control enough to write properly, I can move on to brush work and hand sign practice, he thought with a sigh. One step at a time, I suppose. At least I'm learning patience at last. He chuckled to himself as he finished one page and moved on to the next. When the Hokage arrived a little while later to pick up Naruto, he smiled proudly to see him so industrious. So Naruto, what would you like to have for dinner? Ramen! Cried Naruto excitedly as he jumped up from the table and hurried over to the Hokage's side. Ramen it is! Chuckled the Hokage as the two made their way out the door. A short while later found the two seated side by side at the Ichiraka ramen stand's counter. Both inhaled happily as 2 bowls of the rich, steaming, noodly broth was placed before them. So Naruto, started Sandaime after a moment of silent eating. How do you like your new home? It's great, old man, thank you so much! Exclaimed Naruto happily. You are most welcome, Naruto. Is there anything else you can think of that you would like? Asked the kindly old man. Well, started Naruto hesitantly. Yes? I would like it very much to be a ninja, please, old man, said Naruto in a rush. Do you know what that would mean? Asked the Hokage gravely, somewhat taken aback. Hi, it means I would become stronger and able to protect everyone. Exclaimed Naruto excitedly, waving his hands in the air. Everyone means even those that dislike you, Naruto, clarified the Hokage gently. The smile fell from Naruto's face as a look of sadness overcame his young features. They don't mean to, old man, said Naruto gently, they are only sad and frightened. If I protect them and their precious people, they won't have to be sad or frightened ever again, and then I'll be able to free them from their hate, believe it? Oh my, thought the Hokage. Very well, Naruto, I will allow you to become a ninja. But remember, it is a great responsibility, and so you must work very hard. Hi, old man, thank you! Cried Naruto as he launched himself forward and hugged the Hokage exuberantly. Your parents would have been so very proud of you, Naruto. The Hokage chuckled as he ruffled the young boy's hair affectionately. You knew my parents? Asked Naruto innocently. Indeed I did. But before you ask, I'm sorry, but I can't tell you who they were until you are older, but know that they were great people and loved you very much. In fact, I thought of your father as almost a son. Explained the Hokage. Then may I call you Gigi, old man? Asked Naruto. I don't know, mused the Sandaime out loud. Only to be hit with Naruto's most debilitating attack as a child, the puppy dog eyes no jutsu. Please, begged the 6-year-old child, holding his hands up under his chin and smiling whimsically. All right, laughed the Hokage, raising his hands in surrender. But only if you call me Hokage in front of others. After all, I am the leader of the village, and my young ninjas need to show me respect. He continued half-jokingly. Hi, Gigi, Naruto cried, snapping off a half-creditable salute. Chuckling again, the Hokage marveled at the precociousness of the young boy. Come now, we must return you to your apartment. It is time for all good shinobi to be in their beds, said the Hokage as he laid a hand on Naruto's small shoulder. Then the two turned as one and exited the ramen stand. Chapter 5. The next morning found Naruto awakening, as usual, with the sun. Stretching languidly, he squirmed on his sheets, enjoying the sensation of wakening in a bed. Getting up, Naruto made his way to the bathroom to complete his morning absolutions, before making his way to the mat on his living room floor to complete his morning exercises. After completing 20 repeats each of sit-ups, push-ups and legs raises, Naruto ran through the stretches designed to improve flexibility before finishing up by sitting in the lotus position to begin his morning meditation. Feeling refreshed, Naruto moved into his kitchen and made himself a bowl of cereal, which he ate standing up at the sink. When he was finished, he moved to his bedroom to remove his sleep pants and dress himself in a pair of shorts and a t-shirt for the day. He put on his ninja sandals, grabbed the bucket from under the sink and headed out the door after grabbing his keys. Stretching in the morning sun, he thought to himself, right, first up I need to gather supplies from the forest before it's all gone in a couple of weeks' time. Nuts should last for a while and I can dry any berries I find in my stove to keep. Then I'll need to gather some intel on how best to train a young body. It's been a while and the details are a little fuzzy. Naruto had only really received effective training in his later years, his early training being mostly self-taught through observing the training of older students, and had consisted of much trial and error, and so was not as effective as it could have been. A fact that Jiraiya had bemoaned at length. Quickly making his way across the village, once again utilizing alleyways and shadows, Naruto made his way to the training fields by the west gate. To aid in all-day training, edible plants had been encouraged to grow around the outskirts of each training ground, an innovation of the first Hokage. It was these that Naruto was aiming for, as they provided an easy source of berries and nuts without the need to venture into the surrounding forest, which may raise suspicions. Naruto quickly found what he was looking for and got to work filling his bucket. Once filled, Naruto once more made his way across the village to his new home. He separated out his harvest, placing the berries on a couple of cooking sheets he found in his cupboard and put them in the oven on its lowest setting. Carrying the bucket with his nut collection into his bedroom, Naruto opened the lowest drawer in his dresser and placed them inside after first checking each nut for spoilage and uninvited quests of the insect variety. Right, thought Naruto, checking the berries, they should be right for at least 4 hours. Now for some research. Naruto smiled mischievously to himself as he posed in the center of his living room floor. Spreading his feet, he placed one hand on his hip and raised the other in the air, pointing dramatically out the door. Then he called out in a carrying and overly dramatic voice, "To the library." The Great Konoha Library was conveniently situated a couple of blocks from Naruto's apartment, between the Hokage's Tower and the Ninja Academy. It was a squat 3-story building housing the Civilians/Academy collection on the ground floor with the Chunin collection on the second and the Jonin collection on the third. Each level was separated by security seals only accessible by the clearance given with a ninja's promotion through the ranks. Unbeknownst to most of the village, beneath the main library was another 4 levels of archives and other ultra-secure collections, including the ANBU and medical ninja records for the village. As such, though it was a public building, the library was one of the most secure buildings in the village. In his previous life, Naruto had never had occasion to enter the library as his below-average literacy skills as a child prohibited him from even thinking of doing so. It may have surprised those that knew him then that the library was the first place he thought of now that he needed to do some research on training techniques. During the 3 years Naruto had spent with Jiraiya, Naruto had rather surprisingly, especially to himself, become a voracious reader after Jiraiya had managed to correct his reading problems. After his rather embarrassingly meager literacy levels were corrected, Naruto literally devoured any books he could get his hands on. Like many lonely people, Naruto found an escape through books and very quickly became a connoisseur of the well-crafted tale, as was made evident in his dismissal of Jiraiya's trashy novels as boring, much to the old man's chagrin. But the main thing that Naruto loved about books was that they taught him things. Books, without prejudice, gave the same information to everyone. They were never too busy to provide answers and were always available no matter how late at night, or how early in the morning. Books provided what the knowledge-seeking teen craved: opportunities to learn. To learn about new techniques, new places, and new people. It didn't matter what it was about, Naruto was always interested. After a lifetime of not being able to have his questions answered or having his fundamental misunderstanding of the basics ignored by so-called educators, books became a lifeline of knowledge to the teenage shinobi. However, on his return to the village, Naruto had found his time taken up with physical training and missions, leaving no time for reading and as such no chance to visit the village library. So it was with some trepidation that he now entered through the front doors. Keeping to the shadows, Naruto snuck past the front desk and headed toward the section on the far right that was labeled as the Academy Collection. Quickly concealing himself behind the first shelving unit, he started to scan the book titles. Chakra, what is it and how it works? Balance in mind and body. Ah, this should do. Chakra control, exercises for the beginner. Now for muscle building. That looks like it on the next shelf over. Naruto looked around quickly before stealthily moving across the aisle to the next shelf. After gathering a few likely candidates, he made his way to the back of the shelving to where study corals lined the back wall. Choosing the coral furthest from the shelves, Naruto set down his pile of books and began to read. He jumped and peered over his book warily as he heard a voice say out of nowhere, "Here, you might like to try this one as well." The author is a little insane, but no one can dispute that his training methods don't produce miraculous results. Naruto hesitantly reached out and took the offered book from the hand of the smiling middle-aged woman standing in front of him. "Hello, I'm the head librarian here, Chishiki Nara. If you need anything, feel free to come and ask me. It's my job to help find information after all." Still smiling gently, Chishiki turned to leave. "Wait," called Naruto. "It's okay for me to be here?" "Of course," exclaimed the woman. "Why ever would you not be welcome? Now if you'll excuse me, I need to go and help someone else. Good luck with your studies." "Thank you," said Naruto as tears came to his eyes, which he quickly wiped away on his sleeve. He had not expected to find another place of acceptance other than the Hokage's office this early in his life. If only Naruto had known in his first lifetime about the library. The librarians of Konoha, being voracious readers themselves, were predisposed to looking underneath the underneath, and as such were the least likely to mistake the scroll for the kunai. Added to this, the head librarian, in her role as research assistant, had worked personally with the fourth Hokage, and so had every faith in his sealing ability. With this, Naruto's acceptance at the village library, should he have ever graced its walls, was firmly cemented. Naruto looked inquiringly down at the book Chishiki had given him. "Ha! Flaming the Fires of the Youthfully Young, How to Be a Most Splendid Youth by Mato Guy. Hee, old bushy-brows sensei actually wrote a book, this should be good." He cracked open the book and began to read. A few moments later the quiet of the library was broken by the sound of Naruto repeatedly banging his head against the desk as he chanted "Baka, Baka, Baka, Baka." According to the book, the exercises that Naruto had used to train during his early years, some of which were given to him by instructors at the academy, were so unsuited to a young developing body as to be detrimental to its development. The high-stress, weight-heavy exercises, whilst perfectly fine for muscle development during the teen years, only caused muscle trauma in the very young. What he needed was an exercise program focusing on low-impact exercises such as stretching and resistance training. Thank goodness he had held out on an intensive training program until his housing situation was settled, so he didn't have any damage that he would need to overcome before he could start training properly. According to Gai-sensei, the use of weights was only profitable when the body's muscles and joints had developed past a certain point, usually in the 10th year of life. Before this, training using elastic material to create resistance and promote muscle growth would produce the best results. I don't have any money for the elastic training bands like the book suggests, thought Naruto dejectedly before he slapped his forehead in exasperation. Of course, rubber bands. For a prankster of Naruto's reputation, rubber bands were a staple pranking resource as they created just the right amount of tension to release a throwing arm when a wire was tripped. The bins behind the academy always had a great supply of rubber bands, and the bins behind the Hokage Tower had a great supply as well, thought Naruto happily. He quickly flipped through the other books, selecting those best suited to his needs, including a book on nutrition and jutsu theory, and then made his way to the front desk so he could check them out. Naruto then made his way over the academy to check out their bins. I should try and research as much as I can. Maybe now with my experience as an actual ninja I'll be able to understand all that theory that Iruka-sensei said was so important. Bonus chaplet. That evening found Naruto lying on his back on his living room floor with his feet resting on the wall, staring up at the ceiling with tears of frustration in his eyes. He was panting slightly from the past 3 hours of exertion in which he had tried and failed to move more than 2 steps up the wall. After over a year of practicing the leaf exercise daily, he had mastered it to such an extent that he could maintain numerous leaves on various parts of his body simultaneously, whilst moving them in complex shapes about his body through the use of his chakra alone. During the month he had spent out in the training grounds, he had even used small river pebble and rocks in an attempt to make the exercise more challenging, but knew that he would need to move on to the next chakra exercise to improve his control, as he could feel the benefits of the leaf exercise plateau. As such, Naruto had spent the last 3 hours trying to attempt the tree walking exercise with little results. Naruto had opted to practice the technique in the privacy of his own living room to avoid any suspicion from anyone that may have seen his practice and asked questions on who taught him. Taking a running start, he could get 2 steps up the wall only to fail the same way over and over again, as his knees would collapse under the weight of his body, causing his back to fall towards the wall and his head to slam into the floor. After his first failed attempt, Naruto had padded his landing area with the cushions from his couch, so he remained relatively uninjured after his many failed attempts, but this did little to alleviate his frustration. Apparently there was a reason that the tree walking exercise was taught only to genin. Not only did they need to have a large enough chakra reserve to sustain the technique, which was not a problem for Naruto, but they also needed the necessary muscle and core strength to hold themselves horizontal whilst walking up a vertical surface, which Naruto did not have. Damn it! Cursed Naruto as he slammed his fist on the floor beside himself. What am I going to do now? He huffed as he blew his fringe out of his eyes. Tech tech tech. Looking up, Naruto spied a small brown gecko sitting on the wall above his head near the ceiling. What are you looking at? Absent-mindedly, Naruto tensed and untensed his legs one at a time as he pulled against the resistance caused by the chakra sticking his feet to the wall. He watched as the small reptile moved slowly across the wall above him. A slow, fox-like grin stretched its way across his face. Standing up, Naruto stretched one hand above his head, channeling chakra to his palm, and placed it on the wall. Raising his other hand, he did the same thing, placing this hand on the wall on the other side of his body a little lower than first. Raising his opposite leg, he channeled chakra to his toes and placed his foot against the wall, and stepped up like he was climbing a cliff or a ladder, till his other foot was hanging off the ground. Channeling chakra to his other foot, he placed this too on the wall. Slowly releasing and reattaching each limb one at a time, Naruto made his way halfway up the wall before he lost control and slid back down to land on his cushions. Jumping up, Naruto yelled out in exultation. Yash! He yelled as he danced around in a circle on the mat in the middle of his living room floor. This he could work with. Chapter 6. Naruto awoke gasping for breath with his heart racing. He had dreamt of all that had gone wrong in the previous timeline, starting from his graduation, the Wave Mission, the Chunin exams, his Jiji's death, Sasuke leaving, the Akatsuki, Gaara dying, Asuma dying, Jiraiya dying, the pain attack, the war. For the past year, Naruto had managed to push aside the realization of the enormity of the task he had set for himself, as he had focused on the more immediate concerns of food, shelter and personal security. But now that these problems had been somewhat addressed, his mind had time to turn to the problem of how to save the future, a problem which was overwhelming his recently awoken mind, causing a state of panic. Before, when faced with insurmountable odds or tasked with a vital mission, Naruto had never panicked, as he was a part of a team. Plans were made for him or with his input, but never before was anything left up to him, and now the future of his friends was in his hands. If anything went wrong, it would be up to him to solve it, and if the future he created through his actions ended up even worse, it would be his entire fault. Think Naruto. What would Kakashi-sensei do? What would Pervy Sage say? Both senseis had stressed the importance of planning ahead, the first step of which, he remembered, was knowledge. Once you knew all the relative information, a plan often wrote itself, according to Jiraiya. Naruto's heart rate slowed and his breathing evened out. Right, I need to set everything out first, and then I'll know what to do. Getting up at last, Naruto then washed, dressed himself, and ate his breakfast, all whilst being careful to keep his mind blank. When he had finished, he took some blank pieces of paper and a couple of pencils from the stationery supplies on his bookshelf, and sat down at his kitchen table. First he listed down all the missions he could remember off the top of his head in a rough order, and circled all those that had a direct impact on Konoha. He then took another piece of paper and listed down the names of all his friends, grouping them by team, and wrote beside each name anything that happened to them that he wanted to prevent, such as Gaara's abduction, Asuma's death, the Uchiha massacre, and so on. Next, on yet another piece of paper, he wrote out a list of his fellow Jinchurikis and their tenants, and beside each he wrote when they had been taken and by whom, all of which he had gleaned from information given by Jiraiya and from when he had met them personally in the Biju mindscape during the war. He even wrote out a list of all his personal jutsu, taijutsu styles, senjutsu techniques, and his meager fuinjutsu knowledge. Once he was done, Naruto looked through the piles of paper circling those incidents he felt he had a chance of changing. He decided to focus on the Uchiha massacre, his Genin exam, the Wave mission, the Chunin exam, Tsunade's retrieval, Sasuke's leaving, Gaara's abduction, Asuma's death, and the war. For each incident he wrote the name at the top of the page, then wrote a brief description of what had happened for each. Taking the first incident, Naruto stared at the title he had given the page, the Uchiha massacre, steadying his breathing as he focused on the words. He closed his eyes and fell into a meditative state, diving deep down into his subconscious in search of any memories pertaining to those words. This was a technique Jiraiya had taught him to use when writing reports, as the conscious mind would often overlook details in the heat of battle, details that the subconscious would retain, piecing together what would occur from half-forgotten personal memories, clues given by Itachi during their infrequent meetings, information found out by Jiraiya and Kakashi and that told to him by Tobi himself. Naruto wrote out the Uchiha incident as he would any report. Naruto's personal memories of the incident were somewhat sketchy, as he had not really paid much attention to Sasuke until after the event. All he could remember was that it had occurred during the first week of the Ninja Academy, some 2 years from his present time. In his quest to get Sasuke back, Naruto had researched the incident to try and understand his friend's motivation, but it wasn't until the visit from Tobi before the war broke out that a clear picture of what had occurred had been obtained. According to Itachi's plan, only those involved in the planning of the coup should have been killed. On the day of the massacre, the civilian women and the elderly would be meeting at the far end of the estate for a family picnic with the younger generation. All the Genin and Chunin level Uchiha were on duty at the village police station, and Sasuke, the only Uchiha of school age, would be at the academy. All Jonin level Uchiha, the clan elders and clan head, would be meeting at the main house to plan the coup, and only they were scheduled to die. Unbeknownst to Itachi, whilst he was slaying the masterminds of the coup, Danzo had sent his root operatives into the police headquarters to kill all the Genin and Chunin officers, who knew nothing of the plans, and to harvest any active Sharingans they could find for transplanting into himself, and a few select root operatives. Itachi knew nothing of this until he had fled after being unexpectedly confronted by Sasuke, who had been let home early due to a council directive that all clan children be allowed home that day for clan training. Still in shock from just killing his own parents, Itachi had responded to Sasuke's unplanned presence by attacking him with his newly awakened Mangekyo Sharingan, which he had gained by killing his best friend only days earlier. By attacking Sasuke with its Kyumi, Itachi hoped that Sasuke would grow strong in his hate and kill him, thus freeing him from his agony of guilt. Whilst Itachi was busy torturing his little brother, Tobi in his guise as Madara had entered the other side of the estate and had slain all the remaining Uchiha, consisting of the civilian women, children, and the elderly of the clan, as they played in the estate's large communal green space. When the ANBU finally arrived, the only remaining Uchiha to be found was a comatose Sasuke lying in the middle of a bloodbath. Naruto sighed as he laid down his pencil. The whole thing would be a complete mess, and as he knew that there wasn't much he could do about it. Even if he trained hard for the next 2 years, he would barely be above Gen in strength by the time everything would occur. Reading over it again, the only thing he felt he could personally achieve would be to keep Sasuke well out of the picture, as he had originally intended to have been. Perhaps he could send an anonymous warning of Danzo and Tobi's intentions to the Hokage using the spy codes Jiraiya had taught him, but he couldn't see what else he would be capable of achieving. Putting aside the Uchiha problem, Naruto took up the next piece of paper and prepared to delve into his memories once again. For each of the future incidents he had highlighted, Naruto carefully set out what would happen, who did what, and what events would lead up to the event. When he had finished the last page, Naruto decided to take a break and eat some lunch to clear his head before he attempted to plan what he should do for each. Tidying the papers into a pile, Naruto got up and dragged a chair over to his kitchen counter. Climbing up, he got a couple of cups of instant ramen down and set them on the workspace. Getting down again, he walked to his fridge and got out a handful of vegetables and some ground chicken to make a simple stir-fry to go with his ramen. Climbing onto his step stool from under the sink after getting a bowl and a knife from the lower cabinet, he proceeded to chop up the vegetables and place them in the bowl, and then prepared the noodles by opening the packets and tipping the sachets of flavor over the dried noodles. Hoping down, he took the kettle and fry pan from the lower cabinet and placed them on the stove. Naruto moved the step stool over to the sink so he could fill the kettle and then moved it to the stove so that he could cook his meal. After everything was cooked, Naruto turned everything off and hopped down so he could carry his meal to the kitchen table. He grabbed some chopsticks from the drawer and sat down to eat. As he ate, Naruto contemplated his small hands and skinny wrists. I'm still skin and bones even after eating pretty well for a month, he said to himself. I won't be able to do any real strength training until I bulk up a little. Though according to that nutrition book Chishiki-san gave to me yesterday as I left the library, if I exercise whilst eating well, that should encourage muscle growth instead of fat deposits, leading to sinewy muscle and lean body shape, perfect for speed techniques. That's probably why I was so fast originally. My body never had enough food to form flab or overly bulky muscles. Finishing up his lunch, Naruto returned to the piles of paper. Well, I really only need to plan ahead for the first 4, the Uchiha Massacre, my Genin exam, the Wave Mission and the Chunin exams. If I can change what happens there, it may affect the future enough that the other incidents don't occur, and if they do, I'll have the 3 years of the training trip to plan out what to do. I'll focus on the Uchiha Massacre for now and plan for the rest closer to the events. But I'll need to hide these papers in case my apartment gets searched for whatever reason. Taking more blank paper, Naruto coded all the information he had written out using the code he had learned from Jiraiya, though instead of using an Ika as the key, he decided to use Jiraiya's first book, which he had borrowed from the library the day before, as he always liked to have a copy on him. Folding the coded information up, he wrote coded labels on the front of each and bundled them up with some string. He took the package into his room and shoved his bed away from the wall. Naruto then lifted the loose floorboard that had been resting under the foot of the bed and placed the package into the space revealed before replacing the board and shoving the bed back into place. Walking back into the kitchen, Naruto took the original pages and placed them into the bucket he took out from under the kitchen sink and set fire to the lot. After the small fire had died down, he mixed some water into the ashes and flushed the whole lot down the toilet. Satisfied that the evidence had been erased, Naruto again sat down at the table with a blank piece of paper and wrote out the plan for the foreseeable future. It read: eat, read and train. Thus Naruto's daily schedule for the next 2 months was set. Waking early, he would run through the resistance exercises suggested in Guy's book. He would then meditate to exercise his chakra. After a breakfast of cereal and some of the dried berries he had collected earlier before winter set in, he would then dress and make his way to the training grounds to run laps out of sight of the villagers and to collect any fruit or nuts still on the bushes. Naruto would then return to his apartment to either study the books he had gathered from the library the day before or to practice his hand signs. Gathering the books he no longer needed, he would then make his way to the library, after which he would either make his way home for lunch or go to Ichiraku's. After lunch he would make his way to the Hokage Tower to spend quality time with his Gigi. On his very first visit, 3 days after receiving his apartment, Naruto had snuck by the receptionist as he remembered that the woman never liked him, and asked the 2 ANBU stationed at the door very politely if the Hokage was in and alone. At their affirmative nod, Naruto then proceeded to kick open the door whilst shouting, "Ohio Gigi," in his most cheerful voice. The Hokage had looked up and smiled at the blonde scamp and had waved the ANBU away, glad for the distraction from the endless paperwork. "Hello Naruto," said the Hokage, "I am glad to see you, but please knock next time." "How are you?" "Great Gigi," sang Naruto. "I'm getting really strong. Strong enough to be Hokage soon," he boasted as he puffed out his skinny chest. "Really now?" asked the Hokage, chuckling as he relaxed back in his chair. "How so?" "I've been doing all these exercises I found in this book by this guy called Guy." "You use rubber band and stretch a lot," exclaimed Naruto. "I see. Could you show me some of these exercises?" asked the Hokage indulgently. "They should be fine if he got them from a book, but I should check to be sure, especially if the book was written by Guy." "Okay," cried Naruto as he jumped up and ran through some of the exercises for the Hokage, glad to have someone check his form, which he had missed from his previous training. "Very good. Those exercises will make you very strong indeed," said the Sandame. "Now then, anything else happening?" The two then settled in for a little chat. Before long the Hokage looked up at the clock on his wall. "I'm sorry Naruto, but I need to get back to this paperwork before it starts to pile up," said the Hokage apologetically. "Can I stay a little longer?" pleaded Naruto, his little lip quivering. "It's so boring in my apartment." The Hokage translated this as his apartment being lonely, but the paperwork needed to be done. Just as he hardened his heart to say no, Naruto unleashed the puppy dog eyes jutsu. "Oh, all right," the Hokage gave in, "but you must be quiet while I work." "Can you do that?" "Of course," cried Naruto happily. "I even brought a book." And from his pocket he produced a small green book. The Hokage's eyes widened as he noticed the title, The Tale of the Gutsy Shinobi. "I wonder how he got a copy of that. Is it good?" "I found it in the library. It's my favorite," answered Naruto. "It's about a ninja who never gives up and he has the same name as me." Naruto made his way over to the couch against the side wall of the office and made himself comfortable. The Hokage went back to his paperwork as Naruto opened his book, and the office was enveloped in silence, but for the occasional turning page. After a few hours of this, Naruto's rambunctious presence rather strangely began to fade from existence in the minds of not only the Hokage but also from the minds of the hidden ANBU as Naruto engaged his stealth techniques learned from years of pranking. An hour later there came a knock at the door. "Enter," called the Hokage. A ninja, obviously Jonin, came in and handed the Hokage a scroll before standing at attention before his desk. "Jonin Jackie reporting completion of A-rank mission." "Continue," commanded the Hokage calmly. "Target identified at 0800 and neutralized as to mission parameters." reported the Jonin. Very well, solemnly stated the Hokage as he puffed on his pipe. You may collect your mission pay downstairs. Dismissed. The Hokage then went back to his paperwork as the Jonin left the room, closing the door behind him. This routine repeated itself 4 more times with various different Jonin before the Hokage remembered his young guest. He looked over at the couch, only to find Naruto asleep with a small smile on his face. However, rather than sleeping, Naruto was in fact congratulating himself on finding a way to insinuate himself into the Hokage's office without arousing suspicion. This way he would be able to gather intel, and in much more comfort than on previous stakeout missions. Thus his daily visits to the Hokage became routine, with only the title of his book changing day to day. In such a way he gained a real insight into the inner workings of the village as well as re-establishing a close relationship with his surrogate grandfather. A relationship he had sorely missed in the years following the old man's death. After visiting the Hokage, which would last for many hours, Naruto would return home to cook a simple meal from his fortnightly delivery of supplies. Before buckling down to study that day's library borrowing, he would then run through his resistance exercise, practice his version of the wall climbing exercise, and then meditate, by which time he had expelled enough energy so that he could sleep. This routine changed, of course, with his enrollment in pre-academy. Chapter 7. It was compulsory for all children in a shinobi village to complete 2 years of basic education, such as reading, mathematics and village history, before starting on their career education, and this was called pre-academy. The children were taught all together so that they all had an equal level of knowledge and basic fitness before they were split up into the various specialized academies or apprentice opportunities, such as the academy for the merchant class, the various manufacturing guilds and of course the ninja academy. Classes were split by social class, all clan student in one class, orphans in another and so on, to make it easier to teach the students at their level. Naruto was required to attend for 6 hours a day, which he did not really mind as he used the time to further his fine motor training. By sitting at the back of the class and remaining quiet, he managed to remain largely overlooked, helped by the fact that the teacher chose to ignore his existence for most of the time, allowing him time to practice his calligraphy and to read up on techniques and skills that he would like to acquire this time around. Naruto's main regret from his time with Jiraiya was that he never really gotten a chance to learn more than the very basics of Fuinjutsu. Most of the time that would have been spent on the technique had been taken up with first learning how to read and then by correcting his atrocious handwriting, and so he only learned some basic sealing and explosive tags. Jiraiya always played off his disappointment by saying that they had plenty of time to train in the skill later, but of course this never happened. By practicing his calligraphy now, Naruto hoped to have the level of fine control necessary for advanced Fuinjutsu by the time he met up with his mentor again, so as to never again cause one of his most important people to feel disappointed in him. All in all, the time spent in the classroom was beneficial to his new training regime. He had time to sit and read the school supplied paper and writing materials, so he did not need to use his own dwindling supply. The physical fitness exercises taught at the academy were tailored to the needs of his physical age, and nutritious meals were supplied at lunch so as to improve the overall health of the village children, and so supplemented his fortnightly grocery deliveries, and as such he was eating more and of greater variety. However, all this came at the cost of a higher visibility of his person within the village. By using the alleyways and shadows to move about the village, Naruto had managed to keep his presence at a minimum, so much so that only a handful of people even knew that he was living outside of the orphanage, in stark contrast to his previous life when much of the village had known within a couple of days. But now that he was required to attend the academy, Naruto had found it much harder to stay beneath the radar. To reach the pre-academy building, students had to travel down a wide road with very few shadows or side streets. Such an approach was deliberately designed to allow for high visibility of the students at all times as a safety measure. But it also meant that Naruto now had nowhere to hide from the angry, hateful stares of the average civilian. For an entire month Naruto had been on tenterhooks just waiting to be attacked by the villagers who seemed to go out of their way to gather and stare at him as he walked to and from the school building every day. Their low, rumbling growls of hate echoing in his ears, and they called him names and warned him away from their children, until one day it all suddenly stopped as the civilians as a whole started to look right through him. Naruto had often wondered why he had not been physically attacked more as a child, except for those few instances when he met groups of obviously drunken civilians when he foolishly stayed out late to train, or the occasional bully. That is until one night when he had felt the approach of a large group of angry civilians only for them to be met and turned away by his ANBU guards. He had of course noticed the presence of said guards and had taken comfort in their presence, as he had still felt quite vulnerable in his young state, and in the thought that the old man was looking out for him. Though it did mean that he had to be careful to hide any advanced training as he did not want to raise suspicions. He had even made a game of trying to identify his guards from their chakra signatures and from any fleeting glimpses he managed to catch of them. Groups of civilians attempted to approach him a few more times, both at home and on the training grounds, only to be turned away time and again by the ANBU, until word got out around the village that the demon child was guarded. Trusting that their protection was the Hokage's top priority, the civilians came to the conclusion that the ANBU were there to protect them from the beast, and as such he posed no physical danger to them. But that still left the problem of a demon in their midst disguised as a human child. How were they to deal with this? Almost as one, the civilians subconsciously came to the conclusion that they would show Naruto just how unwanted he was by publicly shunning him. Perhaps the most damaging of all psychological attacks, systematic shunning of a person denies the very existence of that person, causing a breakdown of the psyche. Eyes look right through and ears do not hear when spoken to. When standing face to face with Naruto, it was as though he did not exist to the average villagers, though this did not stop them from watching him as though he was a rabid animal poised to attack when they thought he could not see them, or from whispering about the demons' audacity to approach them as though he was a real person when they thought him out of earshot. Such treatment, in his previous lifetime, had resulted in Naruto's almost pathological need for acknowledgement, which had led to his famous pranking sprees, obnoxiously loud persona, and rather unhealthy relationships with others. Ironically, though his many pranks had helped develop his espionage skills, the drive to gain acknowledgement through playing the fool had stunted his growth as a ninja, as it had turned his focus away from training and towards being a class clown and general screw-up, and had alienated him from those who could have been his friends. Thankfully, this behavior had been corrected after years of positive acknowledgement from his friends and mentors, as well as his acceptance of himself as a whole during his training at the Waterfall of Truth. As a result, he felt only tired as once again he faced the passive-aggressive wrath of his village. If Naruto had to say who was most likely to have divulged his identity to the populace at large, he would probably point the finger squarely at Michino-sensei, his civilian-born first-grade teacher. The man seriously didn't like Naruto, and made no secret of the fact. Before school started, all of the teachers from the pre-academy had been called into the Hokage Tower for a meeting with the man himself. The Hokage was extremely pleasant, reminding them all in a rather grandfatherly tone of their oaths and responsibilities as teachers in a shinobi village, and asking them to treat all their students in a professional manner. All this whilst four large and intimidating ANBU stood silently behind him. From this, some basic ground rules for the treatment of the village's Jinchuriki were laid out. Of course, no mention of the Kyuubi was to be made by any of the teachers at any time. Naruto was not to be sent out of the classroom during lessons, and all his textbooks would be examined weekly to prevent any sabotage. This, of course, didn't prevent the teachers from ignoring Naruto in the classroom, thus forcing him to learn through observation. Michino-sensei had started the year by calling on Naruto to answer questions in the hope of embarrassing him through his ignorance. But when this plan fell through, he fell back on ignoring the boy's questions and belittling him on any given opportunity. The other students took their cue on how to treat Naruto from the teacher, teasing him and trying to beat him up. However, Naruto's response to this of a sad, disappointed smile, much like what an older brother would give a misbehaving younger sibling, ruined this fun, and they too chose to ignore the boy for the most part. Naruto was glad of this, as in his previous life his academy years had been beset by constant bullying by older students and his peers, as his treatment from the adults around him signaled him out as a potential victim. Bullies knew that if they tormented him there would be little to no consequences, and in fact some people would even praise them for keeping the beast in his place. Though some parents did reprimand their children for their behavior when they caught them tormenting Naruto, not for any concern for the boy, but rather as they would if their child had taken to poking a rabid dog with a stick. Children who attempted to befriend the boy were warned away in the same manner. Perhaps now that Naruto would no longer present himself as a victim, he would be able to avoid the more violent and spiteful of his childhood tormentors. Chapter 8. Naruto sighed in frustration as he slumped down in his chair, staring at the groceries he had just unpacked onto his kitchen table. Well, I guess whoever is in charge of my fortnightly supplies had finally realized who they were for. Damn it! Naruto stood up and paced his floor in frustration while running his hands through his hair. He dragged his hands down over his face as he stopped and took a deep breath to calm himself down. At least the good food lasted for about 9 months this time instead of just 2. I've managed to correct most of the damage done by not eating right for so long. I've managed to get some muscle and I've started to heal faster, he said to himself as he moved back towards the table. But arg. Damn it. For much of Naruto's previous childhood his inherited healing factor had been busy compensating for his severely malnourished state, stopping his organs from failing and supplementing his non-existent muscles. The rapid healing he was known for as a ninja didn't really come into play until a couple of months after he had become a genin, as Kakashi had supplied the team with nutritionally rich lunches, thus giving Naruto's body the necessary fuel to function normally without needing constant healing. Thanks to a more nutritious diet, Naruto had noticed a change in his rate of healing much earlier in his development, which gave him great hope for his future training if his understanding of how muscle developed, which he gained from Gai-sensei's book, was correct. That was if he could keep eating as nutritiously as he had been now that his supplies had been compromised. Instead of the array of fresh vegetables, various meats, high-quality ramen and cereals, dry goods and fresh milk he had come to expect in his deliveries, what Naruto now unpacked was of the lowest quality possible in comparison. Vegetables, what there were of them, were old, shriveled and in some cases rotten. The meat was obviously off-cuts, generally reserved for feeding dogs and cats. The milk was 1 day off expiration, and perhaps most upsetting of all, the ramen was of the cheapest variety, and came in only 2 flavors. Arg! Cried Naruto, what to do? What to do? I could eat out more at Ichiraku. I have a tab which Gigi pays for me, but that's not the healthiest. I'm still getting lunch from the academy, so I only really need to worry about breakfast and dinner. But according to Bachan, I have a very high metabolism and need to eat more than other people, so lunch and dinner need to be large meals, and that takes a lot of food. I could start foraging again and setting traps, but that will take time away from my training. Naruto thumped his fist on the table in frustration, squashing an overripe tomato with his fist, causing seeds and pulp to spurt out the side. Sticking a finger into the mess, he began to idly draw random designs on the table with the juice as he mulled over the problem. I need a more constant source of food that I can control. Too bad I can't just produce it myself. Naruto paused as he stared at the squashed fruit on the table in front of him. Maybe I can. Naruto gathered up the vegetables and examined them closely. Okay, I can get seeds from these tomatoes, and the potatoes are more eyes than anything else, so they should grow well. The pumpkin is a little rotten, but the seeds should still be good. I'll need something to plant them in, but I think I know where I can get some pots. Ino's parents often stored and used containers behind their nursery. That's where I got Uki-san's bed from, and I can get soil from the park. I even have a constant supply of fertilizer coming if all my future deliveries are going to be like this. I'll just need to get a bin from somewhere, and then I can make a worm farm. There's plenty of room on my balcony for seedling pots, and when they get bigger I can plant them out on the roof. There's plenty of room up there. With this plan of action, Naruto set to with a will that only he could produce. Over the next few weeks, Naruto kicked into high gear as Operation Food Production took off. After securing the necessary materials from various locations around the village, usually from back alleyways, Naruto spent the next few weeks hauling dirt by the bucketful from the various training grounds and parks of the village before school and after. He then used an old rope to haul the soil up onto his roof after first scaling up using his modified wall climbing technique. The roof of Naruto's apartment building had been designed as a lookout originally before the building of taller buildings around it had made this function largely redundant. Because of this, the roof had a large, circular flat area in the center surrounded by a waist-high wall with a sloping roof leading down to the edge, perfect for sheltering young plants from the harsh wind and sun. Using wooden boards scrounged from back streets to section off the roof, Naruto created planting beds and placed his bin/worm farm in the center. After filling the beds with soil and the bin with more soil mixed with the rotten offcuts of plant matter delivered to his home and a bucket full of worms he had collected from the park, Naruto planted out some of the beds with wild food plants he foraged whilst waiting for the seeds he planted in the pots on his balcony to grow. Before long there was an edible garden on Naruto's roof, and the daily climb to tend to the plants and turn over the worm farm had been added to Naruto's already packed daily training regime. As he could not subsist on vegetables alone, Naruto would spend the morning on weekends fishing and trapping to supplement his diet with fresh meat which he would store in his freezer for the week. In the meantime, whilst waiting for his endeavors to bear fruit, as it were, Naruto racked up quite a bill at Ichiraku's as he reasoned that an overload of ramen couldn't cause much harm in the short term, and he needed some reward for all the extra hard work. I think that's the name of his pot plant from the manga, but I could be wrong. Naruto had continued with his afternoon visits to the Hokage after starting pre-academy, after visiting the library of course. Over the course of half a year he had enjoyed many interesting conversations with the Hokage, delighting in being able to pick the professor's brain on subjects ranging from jutsu theory to the most appropriate way to greet dignitaries. Though there was one conversation which caused him some discomfort that occurred some 2 weeks into Operation Food Production. On this occasion, Naruto's customary greeting of Ohio Gigi was met with a stern-faced Hokage who invited the boy to take a seat on the chair in front of his desk. Naruto, began the old man calmly, I would like you to explain a few things that people have been telling me lately, if that is okay? Naruto was a little uncomfortable with the Hokage's manner, and started to panic thinking that he had done something to give himself away, but replied in his usual bright manner, Sure Gigi, shoot. It has come to my attention that you have taken up gardening, Naruto. Is this true? Relaxing somewhat, Naruto replied, Yeah, I've taken up growing vegetables and stuff. I read about it in a book, and it looked really easy. I got the seeds from the vegetables delivered to my house, and I even managed to forage some wild growing greens and root vegetables. There's heaps of room on my roof and I have a balcony for all the seedlings. Very enterprising of you, my boy, but tell me, how do you get up on that roof of yours? Asked the old man in an overly unemotional voice. Someone must have seen me and told the old man. Naruto carefully kept an innocent look on his face as he replied, Well, I crawled up, Gigi. And how did you crawl up the side of a wall, Naruto? Pressed the old man. With chakra, of course, exclaimed Naruto in that voice that all children use that makes adults feel as though the child thinks they're an idiot. The Hokage's face became very stern as he asked, And where did you learn how to do that, Naruto? As he finished the sentence, the Hokage's eyes lowered so that he was looking suspiciously at Naruto's stomach. Oh, thought Naruto, that's what this is about. How to explain this without lying? Well, Gigi, I've seen ninja walking up trees and walls around the village, and from that book Chishiki-san gave me last month, you know, the one about chakra control exercises we talked about. Well, in that book it talked about how ninja use chakra to stick to stuff like trees and poles and walls. And I thought to myself, hey, I'm really little and the world is really tall, and if I could walk up walls I'd be able to reach more stuff. And so I taught myself how to do it in my lounge room. But I'm not strong enough yet to walk up walls. I kept falling and hitting my head, so then I thought I would try how Gecko-san does it, and it worked, exclaimed Naruto, flinging his hands about as he explained. The Hokage sat back in his chair with a look of surprised understanding mixed with a little relief. He took up his pipe, lit it and said, "Well, that's certainly a unique little skill you've developed there, Naruto. I think you are perhaps the youngest person to use chakra in that way. Well done! But tell me, why do you want to grow your own vegetables? Wouldn't flowers be more fun?" Naruto laughed as he replied, "You can't eat flowers, Gigi. Nah, I'm growing them for food. The last few deliveries haven't been the best, and I can't afford to be out foraging every day, so I thought if I grew my own then I'll always have fresh food on hand." "What do you mean that your deliveries haven't been the best?" asked the Hokage in concern. "Oh, you know, overripe and rotten vegetables, bargain brand staples, meat offcuts, that sort of thing," answered the Jinchuriki breezily, "nothing too serious. I can handle it." "That's not right, Naruto. The cost of those groceries is coming out of the village funds. Even if you are fine with it, whoever is responsible needs to be dealt with. Don't worry, I'll see to it that your deliveries are fixed up like how they were before," answered the Hokage, clearly outraged at the injustice perpetrated on his favorite 6-year-old. "Thanks, Gigi," said Naruto with genuine gratitude. Not many had tried to correct the many petty injustices perpetrated upon him growing up. "Is it all right if I continue with my vegetable garden though, just in case? I do enjoy it, and it's nice having something productive to do other than training." "Fine, my boy, but only if you use some to make me something when you can. It's not often that I get anything homemade to eat, let alone homegrown," replied the Sandame jovially. Relaxed now that all concerns had been met, the Hokage and Naruto settled down for their usual daily visit. Naruto was glad that he was able to allay the old man's concerns, but promised himself to always have an excuse ready from now on for any new training or skills he should take up. Books would come in handy for this, though learning jutsu may cause some problems, as he wanted to relearn the transformation jutsu and clone jutsu soon. The training scrolls for which would only be legitimately available to him when he entered the ninja academy in a year and a half's time. Perhaps he could get away with ostentatiously spying on the academy students and random genin's practice as an alibi for his inexplicable knowledge of the two jutsu. Naruto was pleased to find that his hypothesis about his newly awakened healing ability was proved true, as over the course of the last few weeks he had found it easier and easier to carry the heavy bucket filled with soil home from the training grounds and up onto his roof. Each day he could carry more and with less effort, as the damage caused to his muscles the day before was healed overnight, leaving behind stronger and more resilient muscle mass. Now that he no longer had to worry about damaging his developing body, Naruto started on the intensive training regime he had been developing for himself using Gai-sensei's books and some anatomy guides he had found in the library. The main book Naruto used was called Confined Youth, Keeping the Flames of Youth Smoldering. It was all about retraining damaged muscles and maintaining muscle strength whilst being a captive, and contained a lot of exercises that a shinobi could do in a small space. Naruto thought it would be perfect for him as it allowed him to grow strong while staying in his apartment, and he adopted many of the techniques written within the book, such as using chakra to hang from the wall while he performed sit-ups and leg lifts, and using fist-sized rocks for bicep curls and other individual muscle-building exercises. Naruto theorized that if it was good enough for recovering shinobi in captivity to do, it was safe enough for him to attempt. Another of Gai-sensei's tips that Naruto had adopted was the step-up approach to exercise reps. Gai recommended in his book to start out slow with as many reps as a person could handle, and then 1 week later add another 5, a week after that add another 5, and so on. So if Naruto could perform say 30 sit-ups, the following week he would do 35 and the week after that 40. The trick was to complete the reps in the same amount of time it took the person to complete the original number of reps. Thus not only would the person increase the number of reps, and thus the difficulty of their workout, but they would also train their speed and pacing at the same time. Once the reps reached 100 sets, the person would then reset, increasing the time limit by 5 minutes once a month. Before long there was an extensive tally sheet stuck on his lounge room floor keeping track of the multiple reps he had to complete each morning. After his morning strength and flexibility exercises, Naruto took to running around the village a couple of times, instead of just around the training grounds, before heading off to school. After school let out and his daily visits to the library and to the Hokage, Naruto would eat dinner at Ichiraku's, then head to the park near his house to use the play equipment to help further with his training. On weekends he would climb the Hokage monument to spend the morning with his dad, then race through the forests just behind the mountain as he would an obstacle course, jumping creeks, swinging from ropes he had previously tied to various trees and jumping from tree branch to tree branch. In this way did Naruto grow stronger and stronger day after day. Eyes closed, breathing calm, he swayed gently to the left as a rock came hurtling past his face. Pivoting on his right foot, he dodged the rock about to slam into his left shoulder, then jumped up to miss the rock aimed squarely at his right knee. Naruto stretched out his left hand and tripped the wire within arm's reach, releasing the next set of projectiles. Swaying and jumping with minimal effort, he managed to dodge all of the missiles only to be hit on the back of the head by the backswing of the original rock. "Damn it!" cussed the boy heatedly as he opened his eyes and caught the rock in his fist as it swung back again on the rope it was suspended from. It was his 4th week training with his newly built avoidance rig, and it was not going well. He was trying to train his senses to detect movement during a fight when visibility was low, such as in mist or darkness, but he was finding it difficult as he kept being distracted by the noise of the village. Naruto had built the rig in a disused section of the park near his home, using traps to release swinging rocks and spring-loaded catapults, being careful to disable the traps and take the ropes with him every night so that no curious children could be harmed. He had scavenged the necessary ropes and ninja wires from the various training grounds around the village, retraining himself on how to tie knots and set various traps as he built his rig. During the evenings the park was often deserted, as all the children returned home for dinner, and so Naruto had the run of the place. On the weekends Naruto would come to the park now and again to watch the other children play, smiling gently as he sat on a swing out of the way, but he found it difficult to approach them as he felt somewhat indulgent and big brotherly even to those children seemingly older than himself, and so did not know how to treat them. It was difficult being mentally 17 in a 6-year-old's body. He found the play equipment to be very useful for his physical training and would spend the evening quite happily in seeming play. Naruto would hang upside down for hours from the monkey bars training his body to use his chakra to keep his blood circulating so that it didn't pool in his head, a necessary skill for ninja as they spent a lot of time hanging from the ceiling. He would run along the balance beams, set at various heights, on his feet and on his hands both forwards and backwards, training his balance and speed, and he would jump from the swings training his body to fall correctly, and how to land safely at speed. Naruto would ostentatiously bring a few training guides along with him, including guides of trap building, which he would leave around with their titles face up to allay any suspicious concerns of his watchers. Naruto theorized that it was his ANBU guards who tattled and as such took measures to prevent any more uncomfortable talks with his Gigi. He wasn't worried about the Hokage questioning his intelligence. After all, the Hokage was used to dealing with genius children, and no one from this time knew him as a knucklehead or idiot. Rather, he was concerned with the fact that he knew way more than he should and didn't want anyone to jump to erroneous conclusions about where he was getting this knowledge from. His one fear was to be seen as an enemy by those he cared for. Sighing to himself, Naruto reset his traps and stood once again in the starting position. Closing his eyes, he steadied his breath and let the sounds of the village fill his head. Breathing in, he identified each sound and then mentally put it aside, until he had gained an understanding of the normal sounds all around him. Only then did he reach out his left foot and trip the first line. Side chapter. Occurring sometime in the past year. It was an unusually wet afternoon in Konoha and Naruto was at that moment curled up comfortably on the couch in the Hokage's office. His Gigi was busy at his desk working on some mission reports and Naruto was engrossed in his book on jutsu theory and classifications, when he came across a paragraph in the book which puzzled him. Looking up from his book, Naruto called out, "Oi Gigi, can I ask you something?" The Hokage put down his pen and sat back in his chair, lighting his pipe as he looked over at the boy. "Sure Naruto, what would you like to know?" "Well, I was reading this book," so saying he raised the book up to eye height to show the old man the title. "And it says here that a ninja is advanced to Jonin if he can show mastery of 2 jutsu. "Yes, that's correct, though they can also be promoted through exemplary work in the field," answered the old man indulgently. "Well, it says here that to master a jutsu a ninja must be able to perform it soundlessly, smokelessly and with a minimum of hand signs, and they must also show adaptability of the jutsu. But I've never seen any of our ninja do that," continued Naruto puzzled. "Well, that's mainly because not many of our ninja take the time to truly master jutsu anymore. I'm afraid that most of the senior ninja that you will encounter are products of wartime education when it was enough if the jutsu worked consistently. Even after the war, people didn't see the need to continue training with jutsu that worked fine as they were, as the saying goes. Why fix it if it isn't broken?" explained the old man. "Why not? I mean, it seems to me that being able to cast a jutsu without sound or smoke would be really handy if you wanted to be sneaky, and isn't being sneaky what being a ninja is all about?" "And what does it mean by showing adaptability in a jutsu?" asked the boy with great interest. "Well, most ANBU learn to master jutsu. It's part of their promotion requirement, even if the majority of Jonin do not. Showing adaptability of a jutsu is just as it sounds, being able to adapt a jutsu to suit different needs by changing the chakra flow to produce different results. You see, a jutsu training scroll, which shows the necessary hand signs and how much chakra to mold, shows the default setting of a jutsu. If you did it that way every time, you would get the same result. However, if you change the flow of chakra, hold it longer on one sign or flow it faster through another, you can change the strength of the jutsu and even the direction. For example, if I performed the earth-style jutsu barrier wall, normally a wall of earth of head height would form in front of me. If I held the chakra in the first and third sign longer, the wall would form on my left side. If I held the chakra on the first sign and speeded through the last, the wall would form behind me and curve slightly over my head," explained the old man at length. "Wow, I've never heard about that. That's so cool. Why doesn't every ninja learn how to do that? We would be like the most powerful ninjas of all the great villages. Clients would flock to hire us," exclaimed Naruto, excitedly bouncing on the couch. "Well, it takes a lot of time and effort to master a jutsu. You need to experiment with the chakra flow, learn how to reduce the chakra overflow. To reduce the necessary hand signs to the bare minimum, you need to practice the jutsu so often that the shape of the chakra is embedded into your mind so that it is controlled through your will, which takes a lot of concentration before it becomes second nature, and you need to do that for any adaptations that you develop as well. You also need to learn how to sub-vocalize so you no longer need to call out the name of the jutsu, and that takes a lot of time and effort to learn. I can't see any of the ninja today being willing to go to all that effort," replied the Hokage. Well, why not? We're at peace right now, there's plenty of time, and if you asked me, that ninja around here could do with a bit more training time. Hardly any of the training grounds I visit are ever occupied by anyone over genin in level, complained Naruto, knowing how unprepared most of the village had been during the invasion in his 13th year. If they start now, they should be in peak strength by the time it comes around again. Come to think of it, I have all the time in the world myself. Perhaps I should look into mastering my own jutsu. I can think of a number of fights where being able to perform a jutsu silently would have given me the element of surprise and allowed me to win more quickly. I never saw the point of sneaking into a battle when the first jutsu would alert everyone to your position. Much better to enter with a bang if they're only going to know where you are anyway. You have a point, my boy. Perhaps I'll suggest it to my jonin at our next meeting, replied the Hokage thoughtfully as he returned to his papers. Sounds like a plan, Gigi, exclaimed Naruto as he settled back on the couch with his book to read more on the details of mastering jutsu, plans swirling through his brain as the rain beat against the window outside. Chapter 9. The last few months had been especially good to Naruto. Due to a better diet, he had not only bulked up, as much as a 6-year-old could, but also had his first growth spurt since he journeyed back in time. As a result, he no longer had to stand on a chair to reach the upper cabinets in his kitchen, but instead utilized the small step stool from under his sink that he had used to reach the bench tops. Naruto had also begun experimenting with enhancing his muscles with chakra, allowing him to jump greater distances when training in the forest behind the Hokage mountain and to finally perform the tree climbing exercise properly instead of just crawling up the wall, though he was careful to practice this new skill only in the privacy of his own apartment, as he did not want another uncomfortable conversation with his Gigi. But the best thing to happen in the last few months occurred only 2 days ago, when Naruto celebrated his 7th birthday once again. The day had started well with breakfast at the Ichiraku stand and only gotten better from there. After breakfast, he had spent the morning helping Tuchi-san and Ayam prepare the noodles for the festival crowds. They had both been surprised at how much of a natural he was at preparing the noodles, almost as if he had done it before. At lunchtime, he had made his way to the library, being careful to avoid as many people as possible in the bustling streets, as Toshiki-san had invited him for lunch in her office. The Hokage, after hearing about the head librarian from his surrogate grandson, had suggested that she would like to do so as he would be busy at the time opening the Remembrance Festival, an event to which Naruto would not be welcome. Chishiki was more than happy to fulfill the Hokage's request, and the pair spent a wonderful few hours eating Chishiki's prepared birthday lunch and talking about the books Naruto had read recently. Before he left to spend the rest of the afternoon at the Hokage Tower, she had also presented Naruto with his first gift of the day, a book on sleight of hand and a 1-yen piece with which to practice. I noticed you've been practicing your hand signs for the last few months whenever you are reading in the library. If you practice the tricks in this book, it will help with your finger dexterity, so it will be easier to form the signs faster and more accurately. There's also a section on lock-picking and escaping from knots, which will also come in handy when you become a ninja. The woman had explained as he opened the gift. Naruto was touched and thanked the librarian with a hug and his cheesiest grin as he left to spend the rest of the day at the Hokage Tower. Thanks to Shiki-chan, he cried as he raced off down the road. Chan! What do you mean, Chan? She called after him as she smilingly shook her fist after his retreating form. That boy, I don't know, she mumbled to herself as she turned and re-entered the library, shaking her head in amusement. When Naruto arrived at the Hokage Tower, he was pleased to be told that the Hokage had cleared his afternoon schedule to spend with him, just the two of them. Due to the incident that occurred during Naruto's birthday last year, the old man had thought it best if Naruto spent the night at the Hokage Tower, as it was the easiest location to secure and the boys' guards could be freed to patrol the festival, as the Hokage's personal guards could see to his safety as they would be guarding the sandame at the same time. Naruto had a wonderful time playing games with the old man and recreating his most treasured childhood memory, when the Hokage had allowed him to wear the hat and sit in the chair. Though this time he made sure to ask for a copy of the photograph that was taken to hang up in his room, as he had not thought to do so before and had regretted that fact after the sandame's passing. The Hokage had then presented the young boy with a set of his very own training kunai and shuriken and spent the rest of the afternoon in the Hokage's own training room in the sub-basement going over the basics. Hiruzen was very pleased with how quickly Naruto picked up the techniques, and before long the aspiring shinobi was hitting the target, if not the bullseye, 9 times out of 10. After a wonderful dinner of all Naruto's favorites including barbecue, curry and of course an assortment of fancy ramen, the old man and Naruto retired to the Hokage's lounge where he usually entertained visiting dignitaries. The rest of the evening was spent with the Hokage telling stories about famous Konoha ninja that he had personally known. Naruto's favorite stories were those that involved his parents, though he was careful not to appear overly interested whenever they were mentioned. It was late into the night when the excitement of the day finally caught up with his young body, and even though he mentally protested his weakness, he finally fell asleep to the gentle tones of his Gigi's voice. He awoke late the next morning, still in the Hokage's lounge, and after bidding his Gigi a good morning, set out to Ichiraku's for breakfast with the biggest smile on his face and a skip in his step. The next day he had arrived home from school and instantly knew that someone had been in his personal space, as a heavy scent of dog mixed with a hint of paper and steel permeated the room. He smiled brightly as he raced into his bedroom to find one more belated birthday gift on his bed. The first time he had received the gift, a funny animal-themed sleeping cap several sizes too big for his small head. He had been beyond pleased and had wanted more than anything to thank the one person, other than his Gigi, to ever give him anything. Naruto had never been sure how, attributing the ability to instincts if he had ever thought of it at all, but he had been able to follow the mystery person, by some mysterious means, through the bustling Konoha streets, without catching sight of him once, to an unassuming building halfway across the village. Naruto had known instantly, even before he had seen the gift, that someone had entered his apartment, and somehow knew which way he had gone when they had left. With the reoccurrence of this childhood event, Naruto now realized, with his more mature mindset, that he had been able to smell the intruder in his personal space with his advanced sense of smell, and had subsequently followed the scent trail through the village. All a young Naruto had known was that someone had been in his room and they went that way, though he could not articulate how he knew this. All of which explained his present position perched high above the street looking down at the very same unprepossessing building just across the road. The building being what he later learned to be the ANBU barracks where off-duty ANBU went to rest up between missions, and the site of his very first, though unintentional, prank. It had taken a young Naruto quite a while to find an access point to the building the first time this had occurred. Serendipitously, a rookie ANBU had left a second-floor bathroom window open and had forgotten to reset the security seals, allowing access through the help of a nearby dumpster to a young but determined Naruto. After gaining access, Naruto had followed the scent to a small, utilitarian room containing only a bed, a small desk and a chair, all in shades of gray. The room was deserted, and it was at this point that Naruto had lost his nerve of thanking the mystery gift giver in person, and thought to leave a message of thanks instead. Not knowing how to write posed a problem, but looking around the room, Naruto thought that if he decorated the sad-looking room, maybe the mystery person would be pleased as he was with his gift. Wandering down the small corridor, Naruto had searched through the rooms for something to brighten the space, when he finally came across a small storage room at the end of the hall which contained amongst other things cans of fluorescent pink paint that the ANBU used during training to simulate explosions. Taking a can and a sponge from a nearby shelf, Naruto had returned to his benefactor's room and proceeded to paint the wall above the bed, and the wall above the desk, and on the space behind the door and on the floor beside the bed. Just as he was finishing, he had been surprised by the door swinging open behind him to reveal a man in a half mask, drying his white hair with a towel. Perhaps because of the sudden spike in adrenaline, perhaps because the ANBU was caught by surprise, but whatever the case, Naruto managed to evade immediate capture by the highly trained ninja by sliding through his widespread legs and racing from the building. The resulting chase had only lasted for a couple of minutes, but the feeling of euphoria caused by the release of adrenaline and being the center of concentrated attention from an adult cemented pranking as a worthwhile endeavor in his young mind, after it had been explained to him that that is what he had done, of course. Even after the inevitable punishment and lecture from his Gigi, Naruto had laughed gently to himself when he once again received the small gift and recognized the scent, putting a face to his first, unintentional, pranking victim. Who would have thought that the very man who had continually ridiculed his sleeping hat on numerous missions had in fact been the one to give it to him in the first place? Looking down at the building across the street, Naruto watched the various comings and goings and adjusted the straps of the bag on his back, preparing to recreate his very first prank, with some artistic changes. After all, he needed a stress reliever after all his hard training, and the ANBU needed this reminder about security. They were getting soft after all if an untrained 6-year-old could infiltrate their home. Naruto scaled down the side of the building and slipped through the shadows till he stood just beneath the open bathroom window. Climbing up onto the nearby dumpster, he looked around warily before hopping up and through the window. Crouching down beside the closed door, he listened carefully, before easing it open and cautiously making his way down the corridor towards the stairs at the end of the hallway. He cautiously made his way up, keeping all his senses alert for the presence of others. He did not want to be caught before he managed to leave his gift behind. Making his way to Kakashi's room, Naruto slipped inside and looked around. It was just as depressing as he remembered, but he was here to change that. Slipping the bag from his back, Naruto opened it, and reached inside to take out the small dog carving he had made using the training kunai that his Gigi had given him a couple of days before. He placed the dog on the pillow and slipped a piece of paper with the kanji for thank you written on it underneath. Returning to his bag, he took out a small potted flower and placed it on the desk. Naruto dusted off his hands as he stood back and admired his work. There. Now to get out of here without being noticed. Listening once more at the door, he eased it open and made his way back downstairs, after first visiting the storage closet at the end of the hall. Bypassing the bathroom, through which he had entered the building, Naruto made his way to the first floor and cautiously entered the ANBU common room. Quickly grabbing one of the cans of paint which he had managed to snag from his bag, Naruto proceeded to paint a message in large letters on the wall. Remember to check your windows. Snickering to himself, he climbed back up the stairs and out through the bathroom window. Climbing down the same way he got in, Naruto hurried through the back streets until he was a couple of blocks away before he allowed himself to collapse against a nearby wall and howl with laughter. Naruto was aware that his ANBU guard had probably seen the whole thing, and he was bound to get into trouble over the incident. But in the meantime he was far too pleased with himself to care. The prankster king was back. Sitting high above Konoha, Naruto let the early morning sun warm his skin as he gazed out over the sleepy village. This was his safe spot, hidden amongst the spikes on his father's head, the spot he had always gravitated to when the world became too much. Even before he had found out his father's identity, the fourth had been his idol, and so it was to him that he had always gone to let out his pain, his complaints, and to ponder why. Why he was treated as he was. Why he was hated. And what he could do to change it. Though he had forgiven the villagers' ignorant hatred many years ago, being faced with it once more after he had already overcome it, and gained acceptance once, was quite difficult and somewhat demoralizing. Over the last few months, whenever it all became too much to handle, Naruto had found himself coming more and more often to his safe place early in the morning, to gaze out over his beloved village and to remind himself of why he loved it so much. After all, this village was the place his parents had died to protect. It was the home of his friends both past and present, and the birthplace of the Will of Fire, a way of life which Naruto believed in with his whole heart. But it was not for this reason that Naruto found himself perched once more on the Yandame's head this particular morning. He was there not to recharge and let go of any built-up negativity, but rather to explore a newly awakened ability that he had been noticed emerging during his morning and nighttime meditation over the last few weeks. An ability that he had long associated with the use of his Sage ability, and Biju mode that he was beginning to suspect was in fact an inherited ability from either his Uzumaki or Namake's blood, the ability being the ability to sense not only chakra signatures but also a person's state of health and emotional state. This undeveloped ability may explain why he had always been so empathetic throughout his life, as he may have unconsciously been responding to the emotions of those he interacted with, thus his ability to understand and make friends even with those who would be his enemy. Naruto had previously attributed this ability as a byproduct of the Sage and Biju modes, when in fact it was the high level of concentration and chakra control that such states afforded him that had caused a previously underdeveloped, pre-existing ability to become temporarily active. Due to his daily meditation and chakra exercises over the last 2 years, Naruto's mind was now clear enough that his natural sensing abilities were beginning to develop on their own, and it was this that he wanted to test. He reasoned that the emotional output of a just awakening village would not be as overwhelming to his senses as it would be fully awake, as he did not want to strain himself the first time he consciously tried to use this new sense. Naruto made himself as comfortable as possible, and assumed his meditation position. He first went through his internal exercises, making sure his chakra was flowing as calmly as possible, before he began to open his awareness outwards as he had been taught to do when sensing chakra. Spreading his circle of awareness outwards from his position, he became aware of numerous chakra signatures, a couple behind him in the trees but the majority out in front and below him, glowing gently, denoting them to be civilian in origin. Concentrating on the more fiercely glowing signatures behind him, he identified them as his ANBU guards, relaxing on tree branches as they watched him meditate. Naruto strained as he opened his senses further and felt an internal pop as suddenly feelings of contentment and boredom, separate from his own, became known to his consciousness. He'd done it! Naruto quickly moved his awareness out and over the village, excited to feel more. He was pleased to feel a blanket of sleepy satisfaction rising up from the village. Concentrating hard, he could feel brief flashes of intense happiness, and some negative emotions from individuals, but the overall feel of the village was that of contentment. Naruto smiled as he let the warm waves wash over him. This was a feeling that he could fight to protect. This made it all worth it. This newfound ability to actually feel what others felt only increased Naruto's understanding of why the villagers behaved as they did, as he could literally feel the underlying fear and sadness which fueled their resentment. But though their feelings were understandable, their actions were unjustifiable to Naruto. He knew he had to do something if only to free them from the cycle of hate that they were allowing themselves to wallow in. But what could he do? The more he contemplated on the problem, the more he came to realize that perhaps his original idea of playing pranks was actually the correct response, as it had helped to define him as a cheeky brat in the minds of the villagers and as such separate from the beast he contained. But this time he would be more mindful, not mean-spirited and spiteful in his pranks, but more thoughtful in his approach, using his pranks as a means to teach a lesson on tolerance and to add some joy and excitement to the village. The practice would also help in his future plans, as he would be able to keep his shinobi skills sharp if he approached the pranks as he would missions, planning ahead, gathering intelligence, using traps and avoiding detection as much as possible. To this end, Naruto used his winter break to begin Operation Prankster King by walking about the village, people watching and mapping out the village, looking for potential targets and viable escape routes. Through the use of his new sensing ability, Naruto was able to separate his tormentors into two categories: those who lashed out from deep-seated pain and those who delighted in the torment of others and looked to him as an easy target. Naruto deemed it wise to avoid the first group as much as possible and to give them more time to get over their pain. Whenever it was unavoidable to interact with such people, Naruto would endeavor to respond to any of their actions in a gentle manner, and to never respond with anger. The former group, however, Naruto deemed worthy of his more playful attentions, such as the middle-aged woman who sneered at him whenever he passed her in the street, spewing obscenities after him whilst he was just within earshot, her heart given over to anger and hate. After a few weeks of careful observation of her favorite haunts, this particular woman found herself the victim of a homemade whoopee cushion only moments after once again verbally attacking a young Naruto, as she sat down in a crowded cafe. Or the case of the father and son duo who found earthworms at the bottom of their cups of takeaway soba which they had purchased at a roadside stand just down the road from where the boy had suddenly pushed Naruto down from behind only to be congratulated by his father for a job well done. But Naruto's personal favorite, and the one that made him break out and giggle for weeks afterwards, was the case of the man who emptied a bucket of dirty, slimy water over Naruto as he had passed below on the street. This man found himself stalked for 3 whole days by Naruto. Whenever he looked out a window, opened a door outside or turned around in the street, Naruto was there, standing silently, smirking at him only to disappear whenever the man had turned to call attention to the boy. The pranks weren't much by his usual standards, but they did manage to achieve one of his aims. They made people look at him rather than through him. Naruto knew this was the first step to changing the civilians' minds about him, as he needed first to be seen as himself and know the beast, and was encouraged by this progress. Not all of his pranks were so public, however. His other goal in reviving his pranking career was to practice his ninja skills, such as stealth and advanced planning. To this end, Naruto planned 2 major pranks over the remaining month of the winter break. 2 weeks before the start of the new school year, all the memorial stones in the village were visited in one night, and the soil around the base of each was overturned, despite the presence of the ceremonial chunin rank guards at each. On closer inspection, it was found that spring bulbs had been planted at the base of each of the memorial stones, lying in wait to pay their floral tribute in the spring. The second mysterious occurrence happened only 2 days before the new school term. That morning the Uchihos awoke to find that the boundary fence enclosing their clan estate had been compromised, as large fire and leaf symbols had been painted around the entire perimeter in bright, pink fluorescent paint. Chapter 10. The second year of pre-academy was the first screening process for the village children, where during the first year students were mixed together. During the second year they were split into 2 groups, those whose future career path demanded more of a physical challenge such as the future ninja, blacksmiths and other heavy craftsmiths, and those whose future career paths tended more towards the academics such as the merchants, scribes and accountants. The 2 groups were divided into separate classes, where the first group's curriculum was changed so that physical activity and training accounted for about half of the school day. Such a heavy focus on physical conditioning was an attempt to weed out those unsuitable to the shinobi career before they moved on to the ninja academy. Due to the large number of ninja hopefuls, this class was further split into 4 separate classes, though as the year progressed these classes would be given many opportunities to mingle and learn together, as the teachers used such opportunities to observe the students and how they interacted with each other, as such information was essential for forming the ninja academy classes from which the ninja teams would ultimately be formed. So it was that with the new school year, Naruto was faced with both a new teacher but also with an entirely new class. Some of the new faces were known to him, as he recognized many as the civilian students who would share his ninja class in the future, and some belonged to minor clan members whom he recognized as shinobi who, though placed in alternate ninja classes in the academy, had graduated either earlier or just after he had himself. Naruto was hopeful of seeing some familiar faces this year, but not too much so, as he remembered that a lot of the major clans chose to teach their clan heirs at home during these early years, either for political reasons such as the Uchiha and the Hyuga, or because their family jutsu required uninterrupted bonding time like the Aburame and the Inuzuka, or simply because they were overprotective. In fact, the only clan head Naruto could clearly remember attending the public pre-academy was Ino, and he only remembered this as he had overheard her telling Hinata about how her father had made her attend in the hope of teaching her humility and responsibility during a joint mission. Speaking of which, Naruto thought as he looked towards the classroom door from where he sat in the last row, attracted by the increasingly loud commotion outside. "Make way for the village's strongest future kunoichi!" yelled out a brash, young, female voice as a young girl burst through the door, only to pose just inside with her arms flung wide, obviously demanding that everyone look at her. She was dressed in a short purple dress with boots on her feet, and her platinum blonde hair was tied up in a ponytail high on the back of her head. Just behind her, as if hiding in her shadow, slunk a timid little girl wearing a red dress with her shoulder-length bubblegum pink hair pulled back by a light blue headband. Ino, you really shouldn't be so loud," she murmured meekly as she tugged on the back of her friend's dress. "But Sakura," whined her more confident friend, "how else would everyone know that I have arrived? Come on, you try it too, just yell out that you're here," she continued, obviously trying to encourage her more hesitant friend. "Oh my god," thought Naruto hysterically as the first moment of shock passed, "it's a Chibi, Ino, and Sakura." And with that thought the floodgates opened and Naruto was overcome with hysterical laughter, so much so that he fell out of his chair and rolled down the classroom steps, laughing all the way, only to land at the feet of the surprised young girls. The 2 girls stood frozen in place as they stared at Naruto and waited for him to stop, only to grow increasingly offended as every time it looked as though he was calming down. It would only take one look at their faces to set him off again with intermittent murmurings of "Chibi" and "can't breathe." "How rude!" Ino eventually huffed. "Come on Sakura, let's leave the baka alone. He's obviously an idiot, so please don't take it personally," she consoled her more timid friend as she grabbed her friend's hand and towed her away to sit on the other side of the room from the giggling fool. Well, that could have gone better, thought Naruto as he finally calmed down, and he picked himself up so he could make his way back to his chair, ignoring the stares of his fellow students along the way. He hadn't meant to react that way, but ever since he had returned to the past, Naruto had been thinking of his friends as he had last seen them, and so was not prepared to see them as they were now. I'll have to do something about that, I suppose, before next year, as I know the girls will eventually get over it, but I don't think Kiba or the other guys would if I reacted the same way to them, and especially not Sasuke. As the school day progressed, Naruto found young Sakura's meek attitude puzzling, especially in the face of the overly confident she-demon she would later become. It was only when he took the time to recall his earliest memories of her that he remembered that she had been bullied as a child, and it had only been her friendship with Ino that had enabled her to grow into the competent kunoichi he remembered her to be. It was this transformation from timid victim to class queen bee, on par with Aino Yamanaka, during the second year of pre-academy that had first captured Naruto's young attention and had resulted in his desire to make friends with the pink-haired girl in the hopes that he too could make just such a change. Unsure of the correct social norms and not wanting to mess up, Naruto had made the mistake of asking old man Tucci on the correct way to approach a girl in the hopes of starting a friendship. Seeing an opportunity to mess with the young boy, Tucci had informed him that such friends were called girlfriends and the correct approach would be to ask them out. Naruto did so and was promptly rejected, partly because young girls that age thought all boys were icky and partly because Sakura, having just clawed her way up the social ladder, did not want to jeopardize her position by being seen with the village outcast, and that was when Naruto's stubborn nature kicked in. His never-give-up attitude in the face of rejection meant that Naruto continued to ask Sakura out even in the face of increasingly more violent rejections, and even after he had come to realize the difference between just a friend who happens to be a girl and a girlfriend. As by that point he had talked himself into believing that Sakura was the love of his life, it had taken 3 years away with no contact between them for him to finally realize that though he did love Sakura, it was more a sibling kind of love rather than a romantic kind. Looking at her now sitting next to Ino, whose attitude was not that dissimilar to her older form, Naruto was not too worried about their current dislike of himself, as it had taken a few years and a lot of growing for them to become friends the first time. He was more concerned about watching over them now and seeing what he could do to make them stronger earlier, though this could possibly wait until they started the ninja academy. In the meantime, he just enjoyed how amusing they were as cute little girls. In that way they reminded him a lot of Moegi. Simply knowing how to perform a jutsu is not enough to be able to do so. If it was, any 2-bit thug that got a hold of a jutsu training scroll would be flinging jutsu left and right. No, to perform a jutsu takes not only knowledge, but also the ability to physically manipulate chakra, and like any other physical skill, this takes training and practice. Jutsu are formed by trained shinobi manipulating their chakra to cause supernatural effects. They do so by molding their chakra through specific pathways. This most often accomplished by using hand signs as a mold, and by focusing the caster's will on the desired outcome. Most commonly caused by calling out the name of the jutsu, thus focusing the mind at the point of release. Though a well-trained shinobi, with enough practice in the technique, can manipulate his chakra and focus his will without the need for either hand signs or vocalization. Academy students were first drilled on how to form the hand signs and then on how to manipulate their chakra through the pathways formed by doing so. Only after this action became instinctual, without the need for constant concentration, were they taught how to cast jutsu. Speed was also a factor, as signs formed too slowly could cause the chakra to pool, resulting in a jutsu misfire, and this was also a skill that took time and practice to master. It was towards this end that Naruto had been constantly training his hand seals for the last year, making sure that his hand seals were not only accurate but also formed fast enough. 3 months into the new school year, he finally deemed himself ready to reclaim his ninjutsu. The only problem with reclaiming his ninjutsu, however, was explaining his knowledge of said jutsu to the old man and his A&B watchers. Having exhausted all the possible plans he could think of to gain access to the jutsu section of the library with no success, Naruto now turned his mind to alternative sources for the instructional scrolls he would need to excuse his knowledge of the clone, transformation, and replacement jutsu. He reasoned that as long as no one touched his clones or saw them pick up anything, they wouldn't be able to tell the difference, as even his enemies hadn't been able to do so until they actually hit one of them. It had taken a whole day of racking his brain before the obvious solution had occurred to him. Where else to acquire the Academy 3 than the Ninja Academy itself? He even knew where to look, in the storage room on level 3, the very room he had been assigned to clean, oh so many times, as punishments for pulling pranks and skipping class. He planned to enter the Academy building after school hours, when the students and teachers had left for the day, and before the night guards started their patrols, which gave him a window of opportunity of half an hour just before 5 o'clock. Strapping his pouch of practice kunai, that he had received from the Hokage, onto his thigh and putting on his shinobi sandals, Naruto made ready to leave. Just before closing and locking his door, he grabbed the piece of wire he had found in a random trash can and had fashioned into a primitive window shimmy, just in case, and made his way towards the Ninja Academy, being careful to stick to the shadows wherever possible. Opening up his senses, he felt around for the presence of others before scuttling across the open school grounds towards the safety of the shadows cast by the school building. Bending low, he crept along the length of the wall, avoiding the possibility of being seen through any of the low-set windows, and stopped at the corner to once again scan his surroundings. He could detect 2 chakra signatures in the immediate area, an adult-sized aura in one of the ground-floor classrooms of about mid-chunin strength, and a child-sized aura in the training ground out back of the school at only civilian strength. The child shouldn't cause any problems that Naruto could see, but he would need to avoid the adult, whoever he was, if at all possible. Naruto eased himself around the corner, and made his way over to the 3 large dumpsters that rested against the back wall of the academy. Rising up along the face of the building, just above the middle dumpster was a rubbish chute which ran the full height of the building and as such would be Naruto's ticket to the inside. The chute, though used for refuse, was not as bad as it sounded, as only paper waste was ever thrown down it, and as such it was relatively clean and had been Naruto's preferred method of access for setting up pranks over the weekend in his previous life, even though it was quite narrow and at times a tight squeeze. Climbing up onto the rim of the dumpster, Naruto reached up into the chute and pulled himself inside. Almost immediately after doing so he froze in place with a judicious use of chakra, as felt the rapid approach of the child-sized chakra signature. Soon enough Naruto could make out the sound of frantic footsteps that halted just a few steps from the dumpster above which he precariously hung. In the ensuing silence Naruto could just make out the hiccuping sobs of a small child on the point of tears who nevertheless was trying to calm himself down and appear brave. Rotating himself using chakra alone, until his head was pointing down towards the chute's opening, Naruto cautiously peeked out, being careful to stay concealed. Standing below him he could make out the form of a young boy, perhaps a year older than his own current physical age, dressed in a simple green t-shirt and a pair of shorts, with his thick black hair clubbed into a tail at the nape of his neck. As Naruto watched, the boy seemed to collect himself, and raised up his left hand, in which he held 3 small scrolls with the Ninja Academy symbol painted on the outside, obviously getting ready to throw them into the dumpster before him. Without thinking Naruto called out to him, "Oh, wait a minute," and in doing so lost control of his chakra and plummeted head first into the dumpster below him. "Awa!" moaned Naruto as he painfully righted himself and then stood up, holding his hands up above the rim of the dumpster. "Hey, be a pal and help me out, would ya?" he called out, and soon enough he felt 2 small hands grab his own and haul him out with surprising strength. Tumbling out over the side, Naruto managed to land on his feet and somewhat reclaim his lost pride. Dusting himself off he looked up at the young boy before him and was instantly struck by the boy's 2 defining features. "Hey, those eyebrows look like it couldn't be." Standing up straight, Naruto stuck out his hand and introduced himself. "Hello, my name's Naruto Uzumaki, future Hokage." "Who are you?" The boy wiped his face and blew his nose on his sleeve before grabbing a hold of Naruto's hand and answering, "Rock Lee." "Heh, nice to meet you," beamed Naruto. "Hey, sorry for surprising ya. I didn't mean to startle ya, but I wanted to have a look at those scrolls before you threw them out, as they look like the ones I was going to go look for inside," he finished, gesturing towards the building before sheepishly rubbing the back of his neck with one hand. "I'm not sure if these are the scrolls that you were looking for. They are the jutsu scrolls assigned to academy students to learn from after they have unlocked their chakra. Though they give them to you during the first week, even if you haven't unlocked your chakra yet, you still need to be an academy student to get them," explained the newly revealed Rock Lee apologetically. "Yeah, that's them," confirmed Naruto with a nod. "I'm going to be in the academy next year and wanted to get a head start, as I've already accessed my chakra and us orphans need any advantage we can get over them clan students," continued Naruto cheerfully before a puzzled look overcame his features. "But why are you throwing them out? Have you mastered them already?" "Wow, and it's only been 3 months since school began too." Lee looked away in shame as he replied in a low voice, "No, Naruto, I have not. I am afraid that I will never master any jutsu, nin or otherwise, as my chakra network has been discovered to be deformed, and as such I have been told that I must give up my dream of becoming a ninja of the hidden leaf." Tears sprang to the boy's eyes and his breath caught in his throat as he bit his lip, attempting to stem the flow. Naruto straightened up to his full height, his attitude suddenly serious. "Don't say another word, Lee. You will come with me now," he bit out as he grabbed hold of the startled boy's arm and marched him angrily from the school grounds towards the village library. Nodding a greeting to Chishiki-san as he passed her desk, Naruto dragged Lee towards the study tables against the back wall. "Sit," he ordered the confused boy. "Stay," after which the annoyed young man turned and disappeared between the shelves. Moments later Naruto reappeared with a pile of books held in his left arm, laying them down one by one, with some force, before the startled Rock Lee. Naruto explained their contents to him. Tekken Me, Jonin Shinobi of Kumobikure, sustained injuries to his Tenketsu in the Battle of Misted Rock, unable to cast jutsu. He went on to develop the Rising Rock Taijutsu form and achieved special Jonin rank as a result, served 40 years as an excellent shinobi even after the injury. Mr. Miyagi, shinobi hunter of the village hidden in the clouds, born with chakra levels so low he could only ever cast the most basic of E-rank jutsu, developed the Clashing Gale Taijutsu style and went on to capture the highest number of missing nin of any other shinobi from his village, a most excellent shinobi by any standards. Book after book left Naruto's hands as shinobi after shinobi was detailed, each having one thing in common: their excellence as shinobi and their inability to use jutsu. And finally we come to Might Guy, Konoha's sublime green beast, Jonin and our very own taijutsu master. He is one of the legends of our village, and with his skill he is able to fight off countless high-level ninja unarmed. He makes a conscious effort to rely almost exclusively on taijutsu, as his philosophy is based on what he can achieve with his bare hands. He sees using ninjutsu as cheating. Despite this, he is a most excellent shinobi of Konoha. Naruto stood back and looked at Lee's face, wanting to see if he had gotten through to the dejected boy. Looking deep into the other's eyes, he smiled in satisfaction as he saw a small ember of hope ignite within them. They all were excellent shinobi even without chakra? The boy asked hesitantly, looking up at his new friend as hope grew in his heart. Definitely, confirmed Naruto. All it took was not being afraid of a little hard work. Returned Lee, lost in thought. You know, started Naruto slyly, I know for a fact that my guy will be taking a genin team in a few years' time. If you start now and work hard enough, he might even take you on. Really? Asked Lee, his eyes now shining brightly with hope. Oh yes, but it will take a lot of work. Tell you what, I'll leave you to read through these books tonight, and if you want to travel down this path, I'll help you out by letting you train with me in the mornings, starting at 6 o'clock by the swing in front of the academy. But if you decide not to, if you give up in the face of anything less than complete physical incapacitation, then I must agree that you have no business being a shinobi, especially not a shinobi of the village hidden in the leaves. And so saying, he turned to leave. Wait, Lee called out, why are you helping me? Why are you so concerned? What kind of Hokage would I be if I let one of my comrades fall even before he could begin? Asked Naruto as he looked back over his shoulder. Here, offered Lee as he held out the 3 scrolls he had attempted to throw out before. You said you wanted these and I won't be needing them. I'll see you tomorrow. He finished with his trademark smile and returned to sit down and begin reading. See you tomorrow, Lee. Smiled Naruto in return. Returning home for the night, Naruto locked his door and drew his blinds before giving in and twirling giddily in the middle of his lounge room floor. Everything is going so well, he thought before catching himself and knocking on wood to cancel the jinx. Yosh! Time to get to work! He exclaimed as he pumped his fist in the air. Placing the 3 scrolls on his kitchen table, he moved back and stood in the middle of his carpet. Okay, shadow clones coming up. It took a couple of hours and some minor chakra explosions before he was able to create a single, functional shadow clone, though it still puzzled him how nothing was broken when he accidentally created a 50 shadow clones for a split second in his small apartment. Circling the final result of 2 hours' work, Naruto examined his doppelganger looking for any mistakes. So how do you feel? He finally asked, returning to stand before his mirror image. As far as I can tell, I feel just like we remember our clones always felt, boss, replied his clone as it looked down at itself. Excellent! He exclaimed before a grin spread over his face, matched by the clone in front of him as they high-fived each other, and exclaimed simultaneously, we did it! Right, now to test the memory transfer, grab a scroll off the table and read it while I make some dinner, instructed the original as he moved towards the kitchen to begin preparations. A comfortable silence enveloped the apartment as the 2 Narutos set to work. 15 minutes later, a puzzled look came over the clone's features as he called out to the original, Hey boss, did you know that the transformation jutsu is a genjutsu? Naruto looked up from the pile of vegetables he was cutting. That can't be right. How can a physical change be classed as a genjutsu? Well, it says here that it's only supposed to be an illusion, not a physical change, replied the clone. But well, wouldn't that be useless? I mean, it would take heaps of concentration, otherwise the illusion would collapse with any sudden gust of wind. And what about transformations that are bigger than you? You'd have to look out that you didn't pass under anything that would go right through your illusion. What's the point in transforming into someone bigger if you still can't look over tall fences or reach any further? Man, my sexy jutsu wouldn't be anywhere near as effective if it didn't feel as soft as it looked, ranted Naruto as he walked over, wiping his hands on a dish towel. Well, yeah, it says here that these are common faults of the jutsu, but it also says that the transformation jutsu taught at the academy is only a genjutsu and is to be used as an infiltration technique. It also says that though physical transformations are theoretically possible, it would take so much chakra to be impractical for daily use, answered the clone calmly. So all this time the others have been using an illusion to transform? Must the original. No wonder it didn't look like it hurt when others practiced it in class. I just thought they had better pain tolerance than I did. Used to piss me off. But then how come our transformations are real? Maybe it's because we never, strictly speaking, learned the transformation jutsu in class, reasoned his clone. Remember how the teacher would always make us leave the classroom whenever he was demonstrating the hand signs? We had to spy on the 3rd years to learn how to do it, and they would form their signs so fast that even after watching them over and over again we still had to guess some of the signs. Oh yeah. And by the time it came for Iruka-sensei to test us on the ability, I could create the hand seals fast enough that no one would have caught the difference if they had even cared to look. Finished Naruto as he sat down at the table in a chair facing his clone. What else does it say? It says that Tsunade-bachan had theorized that if true transformation was possible, that the easiest transformation would be into other people, as the brain would use a shinobi's inherent genetic blueprint for the new body, thus negating the risk of a shinobi dying as he created a body that wouldn't work correctly. It was for this reason that it would be ill-advised to turn yourself into an animal without a thorough knowledge of the animal's inner workings, as a misplaced organ would spell an instant, agonizing death. Turning into an inanimate object was extremely advised against, as doing so would cause instant death, as the shinobi would not be able to turn back, as his chakra network would have collapsed, not being able to be sustained in an inanimate body, explained the clone. But boss, we've turned into inanimate objects all the time and we're still here. Yeah, I wonder how that worked. It's probably just because I'm awesome like that, mused Naruto. They looked at each other for a moment in silence, both lost in thought. Oh well, I know it works for us to turn into inanimate objects, so I won't question it, but I might hold off on turning into an animal until I read those biology books in the library and get you guys to practice it before I try, just to be safe. You finish reading that while I finish dinner, and we'll see how much transfers. Unbeknownst to Naruto, it would have in fact been instant death to any shinobi that attempted to truly transform into an inanimate object. The difference between himself and others, however, was his natural healing ability. Sensing the danger inherent in the technique, the primal center of his brain automatically created an organic core surrounded by a chakra shell at the center of any such transformations, to house his consciousness and his chakra network. Much like the sending of white blood cells to fight off an infection, the process was completely automatic and undetectable by his conscious mind. This core acted much like Sasori's heart. This organic core kept Naruto safe whilst using the transformation technique by housing his chakra network, and allowed him to sense what was happening around him even when he had neither eyes nor ears. Returning to the table with a full plate of food and a glass of milk, Naruto set down his burdens and sat down as he ordered his clone to dispel. Naruto closed his eyes as he took a moment to assimilate all the information that his clone had managed to gather. Clone technique is a success, he cheered internally. Better tuck in and have an early night, cause tomorrow is when the real work will begin. Chapter 11. Over the next 3 months, Naruto was never more thankful for a spontaneous decision than he was for the impulse to invite Lee to train with him every morning. Though he had to adjust the intensity of his morning workout to accommodate Lee, he was able to compensate by intensifying his mid-morning and night training, and even so it did not take Lee very long to catch up as his natural robustness kicked in. This slight inconvenience was mitigated, however, by the physiological benefit that Lee's friendship provided to the stressed-out time traveler, their friendship very quickly falling into the easy camaraderie that Naruto had always enjoyed with Lee. A friendship based on a mutual desire for self-improvement through friendly competitiveness with no overtones of jealousy, and only an honest wish for the other to do well also. Lee's continual encouragement for Naruto to do his best and celebrations when he did so soothed the youth's hidden confidence issues that he would be strong enough to make a positive change in the futures of both his friends and the village. Once Lee was able to keep up with Naruto's original morning training routine, he finally deemed his friend ready to try and attract the attention of Gai-sensei. Naruto had mixed feelings about this, not wanting to lose his training partner, but he knew how important Might Guy was to his friend in the future, and so he did not want to jeopardize that relationship for his friend. He did not anticipate, however, how hard it would be to convince Lee to even make the attempt. Look, all you have to do is train after school at Training Ground 9. Might Guy is in the village at the moment on leave, and that is his favorite training field. It shouldn't take too long to attract his attention, explained Naruto for the 5th time. But it just seems so deceitful, Naruto. Could I not just approach Might Guy and beg him to train me? Asked Lee, still unsure. You can do that too, but you need to gain his attention first. Look, Might Guy is all about strength and commitment. You need to show him how dedicated you are. I'm not telling you to deceive him in any way. In fact, I would definitely try not to do so, as the man values honesty over everything else. All you will be doing is training there in the hope of gaining his attention. Don't hide anything from him if he asks you about your training or why you want him in particular as a teacher. That way he will definitely take you on. Naruto patiently explained. True to his words, it only took 3 days of afternoon training for Lee to attract Might Guy's attention, and only a week after that for the man to take him on as a student. We can only train when he is in the village, of course, and I must attend the academy still and score as best as I can. But Naruto, he says there is no reason why I cannot still be a splendid ninja even if I cannot use chakra. Can you believe it? Babbled Lee excitedly as he told his friend the good news. Of course I can, Lee. Did I not tell you so the first time we met? Asked Naruto indulgently as he beamed in happiness for his good friend. Oh, but Naruto, Gai-sensei wishes for me to train with him not only after school but also every morning. A frown appeared on Lee's face as he remembered this, only for it to disappear moments later as he continued excitedly. Perhaps you could join us. I am sure Gai-sensei would not mind, and I know how much you admire him, as you have told me so yourself. Naruto thought about the offer for a moment before rejecting it. It's all right, Lee. I do not want to take Gai-sensei's attention away from you. I still have half a year before I start Ninja Academy, and I know this early training is important for ninja who choose to specialize in taijutsu. Anyway, I am thinking of specializing in ninjutsu myself, as my chakra reserves are quite large and I have my eye on another teacher. But that doesn't mean that we can no longer train together. Your Gai-sensei will be out of the village on missions all the time after all, and we can train together then. We can even have a competition to see who can learn something new by the time we train together again, and perhaps share any new skills that we think could help the other. What do you say? Yash! That sounds like a most excellent plan, my friend. As Gai-sensei says, I can see that your flames of youth burn very bright. Thank you, my friend, Lee exclaimed as he bowed before him in gratitude for all his help. Naruto really didn't want to mess too much with the timeline when it pertained to his friends' development as individuals, and he knew that the training during these first couple of years was really important to Lee, as it helped cement his bond with his teacher and formed the core of his own personal nindo. Lee had told him as much a couple of months before the war broke out on an overnight mission to Rain. Being an orphan himself, Naruto understood just how important this early training time was for Lee and didn't want to mess with it. That being said, if training opportunities came up in a couple of years' time, he wouldn't be passing them up. Naruto took great delight in Lee's progress over the next couple of months as the personality quirks that defined his long-lost friend began to make themselves known. Though he was forced to question if he had done the right thing when only 2 months later Lee turned up at their meeting spot sporting the skin-tight, dark green training suit and the trademark bowl haircut he would be later known for. He reassured himself with the thought that it just would not be Rock Lee without them. Naruto was surprised by how reassuring it was to once more have access to his jutsu, as he had previously been unaware of how much of his sense of identity was tied into his signature jutsu. Now that he had access to his clones once more, he felt much less physically vulnerable and much more confident in his ability to effect positive change. It also opened up opportunities for training that he simply did not have time for before. It took 2 weeks of nightly practicing in his apartment for him to feel comfortable enough in his ability to use his clones outside. He soon learned that if he created only one clone, then it would last for up to 5 hours as long as it did not engage in any strenuous activity. Naruto dubbed this clone as his C-class clone or classroom clone, and it was this clone that attended pre-academy every morning. By creating only one clone, his chakra was split in half between himself and his clone, leading to a longer-lasting clone which was slightly more durable. After resting for half an hour and eating an energy bar he made from a mixture of scavenged nuts, dried berries and honey, Naruto was able to recoup the lost chakra as if he had never split his chakra in half, allowing him to train at full capacity whilst his clone attended class. Every morning he would henge himself into something inconspicuous, like a rock, in the privacy of his own home, and then his clone would carry his transformed self outside and drop him off at the park on its way to pre-academy. Once he was sure that his ANBU guard had followed his clone and no one else was in the vicinity, he would transform back and then make his way to his private training ground at the back of the Nara clan grounds to train with his clones until it was time to swap once more with his classroom clone. Through trial and error he realized, much to his disappointment, that he was only capable of creating 30 clones at a time with his current chakra levels and control. But this was more than enough, as any more would not have fit into the limited space of the training ground. At first he dedicated this morning training time to chakra control exercises and refining the Academy 3, or rather his versions of them, aiming for a soundless and smokeless creation by limiting the amount of extraneous chakra used in their execution. At lunchtime he would dispel all his training clones, and once he had assimilated their memories, he would make his way back into the village to replace his C-class clone. He did not want to pass up the free lunch provided by the academy, as it was still a vital source of food for him, and he also wanted to personally take part in the physical conditioning class that followed lunch, as his clone would not withstand the strain and his physical body would receive no benefit even if it could. Before he left to re-enter the village he would always make sure to create another 30 clones to continue training. One clone would be set to guard duty using its sensing abilities to make sure no one discovered the secret training. 2 more would be set to hunter/gather duty to provide meat, nuts and mushrooms to supplement his diet. The rest of the clones would be set to chakra control exercises and to dispelling, after creating their own replacements, at irregular intervals to train his ability to still function with randomly incoming memories. Pretty soon he wouldn't even flinch when a clone dispelled suddenly, though his earlier reactions gave him the reputation of being jumpy with his instructors, which was recorded on his personal record. In the evenings he would use his clones to further his studies whilst he himself tended to his rooftop garden. He was only able to have 5 clones studying at a time, as he found that any more than that, and the information would be too jumbled for him to understand, and anyway no more would fit into his lounge room. He soon discovered that the best results would occur when he tasked his clones to reading different scrolls and books about the same subject, as his mind was better able to compartmentalize similar material, and he gained a better understanding of the theory by being able to examine various viewpoints by various authors all at once. He had been slightly disappointed by this development, as he had hoped to spam clones and learn everything at once, as it would have been ultimately more badass, but at least he was still able to get through the material 5 times as fast as before with better understanding. 2 months into his new training regime he added the basic taijutsu forms to the program, as he now had someone, even though it was himself, to spot him, so he knew he was correctly forming the stances. He knew from his early training how easy it was to fall into bad habits when you had no one to point out the flaws in your stance. This time he would be able to fix such faults before they had become embedded in his style through repetitive practice. To this end he would create 4 clones to sit around him as he practiced and call out adjustments. When they dispelled he would go over their memories and make a list of all the things he would need to work on. Naruto was also pleased that now he had clones he would be able to continue with his avoidance and flexibility training, which had stagnated as his hand-built training rig had become too predictable, by having his clones throw rocks at his blindfolded figure. After a while Naruto began to wonder if he should be worried by how sadistic his clones were, particularly as he was knocked to the ground for the 6th time by a well-aimed rock to the back of his head. "Why you?" he angrily exclaimed whilst he scrambled to his feet and stalked towards the hysterically laughing clone behind him. "Take this," and he dispelled the disrespectful doppelganger with a fist to the face. "Be more careful next time," he grumbled as he created another clone and took his position once more in the center of the training field. "Right, let's do this." Soon enough it was his birthday once more, and while he was nowhere near ready enough to fight anyone higher than a genin in strength, he was as ready as he could make himself for what lay ahead in only 4 months' time. Naruto's 8th birthday was almost a carbon copy of last year's, with only the gifts marking a difference. Once more he spent the morning helping out at Ichiraku's making ramen and stirring the stock. Just before he left to meet Chishiki-san at the library, the old man and Ayam presented the grateful boy with 42 vouchers for free ramen, extra-large portions. Beaming so hard it looked like his face would split in half, Naruto yelled his goodbye as he raced through the village, dodging civilians and ninjas, themselves busy setting up for the festival. As he went, once he reached the library he helped Chishiki-san shelve the various scrolls and books that had been returned that morning, all whilst he excitedly exclaimed over the techniques and theories he had been recently reading about to the indulgently listening head librarian. After a wonderful lunch handmade by Chishiki-san just that morning, Naruto was presented with possibly the best gift he had received in either timeline. It's not much, Naruto-kun, in fact it is slightly worn, but I can think of no other who would appreciate it more, explained Chishiki with a slightly secretive smile as she gave the small, rectangular, cloth-wrapped package to the boy. Gently unwrapping the gift, Naruto froze in place as he uncovered a small green novel with the oh-so-familiar title. With a trembling hand Naruto traced the words embossed on the cover in gold leaf, The Tale of the Gutsy Ninja. Look inside, Naruto-kun. This copy was donated to the library by the 4th Hokage himself on the eve of his inauguration. He wrote a message in his own hand on the front cover, she explained to the shell-shocked boy. With frantic hands Naruto pulled the book from the table towards himself, and opened the front cover. To future followers of the Will of Fire, I leave to you this tale that inspired my own Nindo. May you find the strength to protect that which you hold precious and the will to strive for peace. Remember to stay true to yourself, to never go back on your word and to never give up. Minato Namikaze, Yandame Hokage. Tears streaming down his face, Naruto gently set down the book on the table before launching himself at Chishiki-san, burying his face in her abdomen as he clung to her for dear life. Arigato Chishiki-san, arigato. After he had calmed down and secured his gift beneath his shirt he once more embraced the head librarian before bowing low before her. You will never know how much your gift means to me, Chishiki-san. Thank you once again. You are most welcome, Naruto, and thank you, she replied as she ruffled his hair indulgently. Now you had better go, I am sure the Hokage is waiting for you. Hi! Naruto yelled out, smiling brightly and waving goodbye vigorously. See you tomorrow. Running through the village towards the tower, Naruto made sure to keep one hand on the bundle beneath his shirt at all times so that he did not lose it. Once more the Hokage had cleared his calendar to spend the afternoon and evening with his favorite ninja hopeful. Ah, Naruto, wonderful to see you, dear boy. How was your morning? Did you have fun? Asked the old man jovially as he sat back and lit his pipe. Hi, it's been fantastic. I got some vouchers for ramen from old man Tucci and Ayam, and just look at what Chishiki-san gave me, Naruto exclaimed happily as he presented his newest most precious treasure for inspection. Oh my, that is indeed a most excellent gift, Naruto. Make sure that you take care of it. Hiruzen said impressed, but now my gifts will pale in comparison, I'm afraid. I'll love anything you give me, just cause it came from you, old man, believe it? Exclaimed Naruto as he put his book away. I'm sure you will, chuckled Hiruzen as he got up and approached the boy hiding one hand behind his back. He placed his other hand on Naruto's shoulder, causing the boy to look up into his eyes. 8 years old today, that means that next year you will be starting Ninja Academy, and as such you will have much more responsibility. That being so, I feel that you are ready for this. And so saying, the old man presented Naruto with a small, round gift wrapped in brown paper. Smiling, Naruto tore off the paper and exclaimed, Gama-chan, as he held the stuffed toad-shaped purse high above his head with both hands. Arigato, Gigi. This is not just a purse, Naruto. This is the start of your independence. Inside is your allowance for the next month. With this you will be responsible for buying your own food and clothing from now on. At the end of the month I will give you some more for the next month and so on. But you must make sure not to spend it all at once. Do you think you can do this, Naruto? Asked Hiruzen seriously. Hi, Gigi. Don't you worry, and if I do it won't really matter as I can always find food or use what I have grown. Naruto reassured the old man, extremely happy that he now had access to ready funds. He could now buy some better clothes and training equipment. The clothing assigned to him was getting a little tight and worn out as it was civilian grade and not really up to the strain of his daily training. That is true, isn't it? Chuckled the old man indulgently. I also have this for you, he continued, holding out an even smaller package also wrapped in brown paper. It is from my most accomplished former student. I told him about your training with rocks as substitutes for weights, and he made you this as a better alternative. Ouch, that's pretty faint praise, Gigi, considering your other students are either a snake-obsessed trader or an alcoholic gambler who always loses. Per Ero-sanin, thought Naruto tsuking to himself as he unwrapped the small gift. Inside he found 2 black wristbands with red Uzumaki swirls painted in the middle. They may look like normal wristbands, but they hold a secret. My student is a sealing master, and created these seals for training purposes. They are concealed beneath the decoration on the front. They are called resistance seals, and they work by putting resistance on your whole body all at once, working all your muscles. As such, it is a much more effective way of training than using simple weights. The seals are self-calibrating, which means that they will adjust to your current ability. All you do is slip them on, and then send a burst of chakra into the seals. They will then measure your current strength, and adjust the resistance to just above your current level so that it will feel like you are wading through thick mud, causing you to work all your muscles every time you move and thus making you stronger. To release the seals, just form the ram sign like so, and pulse your chakra once more. Every time you turn the seals back on, it will recalibrate, so make sure to turn them off at least once a week and move around normally for one whole day so you can get used to moving without them on. Hiruzen explained whilst Naruto curiously examined the wristbands before putting them on. Thanks, Gigi, he exclaimed as he sent chakra into the seals and then promptly fell over. The Hokage laughed as helped the boy back up. Careful there, Naruto, and you are most welcome. Now how about something to eat? I don't know about you, but I am famished. The rest of the evening was spent laughing, eating and telling stories until they both fell asleep. The next morning when he returned home, Naruto's apartment once more smelled of paper and dog, and on his bed he found one last gift, a pair of green goggles. No matter how hard he searched, however, Naruto could find no sign of Kakashi in the village, and he did not feel his chakra signature in the ANBU detail set to guard over him over the next 4 months either. By snooping in the ANBU mission records at the tower, he discovered that Kakashi, codename Inu, was assigned a highly classified undercover mission outside of the village. It would be another 2 years before he returned. A common factor of the seals used to create Jinchuriki was the ability for the host to communicate with the beast sealed within. This was usually facilitated through a filter built into the sealing matrix. Depending on the filter used, different triggers were necessary for communication to take place. For example, the seal used on Killer Bee and Yujitoni needed the Jinchuriki to consciously wish to open the lines of communication. Others like Gaara and Han had no such filter, and so their Biju could talk to them constantly. Naruto's filter was unique in that he needed first to know about the beast within, accept it, and then to consciously wish to speak to it for communication to be possible. Ever since he had awoken in the orphanage, Naruto had left part of his mind open, straining to hear anything from the seal. He thought he could detect the faint, echoing sounds of deep breathing, but this could just as easily have been an echo of his own. But over the last few months this sound had been interspersed with low grumbles, growls, and slightly humorous yips. Kurama was stirring. On the night that his father, Minato Namikaze, had sealed the nine-tailed beast within him, he had split the enormous creature's chakra in half, taking the in or spiritual portion with him into the belly of the Shinigami. By doing so he hoped to lessen the strain on Naruto's underdeveloped chakra coils and to mitigate any possible influence the great beast may have had, as splitting its chakra would have sent it into a coma until Naruto was at least 16 years old. What he failed to take into account was the mutation that would occur in Naruto's healing ability, as his Namikaze and Uzumaki blood mixed, causing this ability to act in overdrive. When this ability was then mixed with the Kyuubi's more potent chakra, Naruto's healing ability took the next leap to become regenerative. As was seen time and time again when Naruto's wounds would almost instantly heal whilst he was using the Biju cloak, wounds that would take hours or even days to heal normally. A section of Naruto's seal had been deliberately designed for his and the Kyuubi's chakra to mix. Every night as he slept, a small portion of his chakra would be sucked into the seal to be mixed with a portion of the Kyuubi's chakra. This mixing process would dilute the great beast's chakra and somewhat purify it. The chakra would then be released back into Naruto's system at dawn, accounting for the chakra surges he experienced each morning, as the more potent chakra would then be absorbed into his system, swelling his already high chakra reserves even higher. Thus Naruto's chakra system would get used to small amounts of the Kyuubi's chakra, gradually building up a tolerance to the more potent and corrosive chakra, so that by the time he was a Jonin his body would be ready to harness the beast's full strength. Or at least that was the plan. What Minato had not accounted for was the fact that Naruto's natural healing ability, carried in his chakra, would affect the great beast and speed up the recovery of its lost chakra. As a result, the great beast recovered enough of its chakra to awaken during Naruto's 8th year. It would take another 3 years for Naruto to become aware of the Kyuubi and open the lines of communication, but the beast bided its time by forcing more chakra through the seal than it was designed for at irregular intervals, thus messing up Naruto's control and fuming about how his jailer would not even give him the courtesy of a gloating visit, as its previous 2 hosts had done. This was not to say that all of the lost in chakra had been recovered or rather regenerated by Naruto's 8th birthday. Kyuubi's chakra was still horribly unbalanced and with much more yang or physical energy than in, which accounted for its angry red coloring and the great beast's overwhelmingly negative attitude. It would take another 8 years before Kyuubi's chakra would be fully balanced, but for now there was just enough in energy for Kurama to regain consciousness. 3 days after his birthday, Naruto knew that he couldn't put it off any longer. The irregular snarls and growls in the back of his mind were getting more frequent, with occasional grumbles and mumbles of a semi-conscious mind on the point of waking up. It was time to once more enter his mindscape and wake Kurama up at last. Naruto had been hesitant to do so ever since he had abruptly awoken in the orphanage. Sure, he and Kurama seemed to have become somewhat friendlier towards each other in the last few moments of the war, but the resulting silence ever since had been somewhat off-putting. Naruto decided that if he was going to do this it would need to be somewhere private, so he decided to take himself off to his private training ground just in case any of Kurama's chakra escaped. The day before, he had his clone take him outside in his rock form, just before dusk, and drop him off at the park, before it headed home and finally dispelled itself behind closed blinds. He then made his way carefully to his training grounds to spend the night, creating another clone to keep guard with its sensing ability. The next morning found Naruto sitting beneath the shade of one of the surrounding trees with another 4 clones dispersed throughout the surrounding forest keeping guard. Taking a deep breath, Naruto cleared his mind and entered a meditative state. Reaching deep within himself, deeper than he had gone before, Naruto felt the distinctive mental jolt that signaled that he had entered his mindscape. Slowly he opened his eyes and looked around. A puzzled look overcame his features as he thought, now where am I? Instead of the familiar red-lined sewer walls and thick, ghastly-smelling, ankle-deep liquid beneath his feet, Naruto was met with the pure white glow of an endless void surrounding a veritable sea of smooth, ripple-free, silver liquid on which he somehow stood even though he had the feeling that it was infinitely deep. Looking down he saw his reflected self. Oh hey, I'm big again. I suppose this is my mental image of myself, as I don't exactly feel like I'm 8. But it sure looks different in here. It almost looks like that place where I met all the Biju. But how am I supposed to find Kurama? There's no paths to follow. Everything looks the same. As he said this, a black dot appeared on the horizon in front of him. Shrugging to himself, Naruto set off towards it. Even though he was not moving very fast, soon enough he found himself standing in front of an enormous cage. Sitting on a vast rock plinth rising just centimeters above the water's surface, the cage's shadowed interior was surrounded by a ring of bars, constructed of a metallic substance, that stretched up and disappeared overhead. On the central bar, whose width was the size of his chest, was a paper seal stuck to the bar just above his head. Naruto hesitantly approached the cage, squinting to try and see through the gloom. Kurama? He called out. Inside the cage, the features of the great nine-tailed fox slowly came into focus as it opened one of its massive eyes. A rumbling growl issued forth from the great beast as it raised one gigantic paw and stretched it out through the bars and formed a fist just in front of Naruto's face. Brat. Trembling now, Naruto raised his own arm and bumped fists with the Biju before him. Tears streaming down his face, he slumped to his knees as his strength gave out in relief, making sure to maintain contact as he did so. Thank Kami, he whispered. He was no longer alone. Some time later found Naruto sitting cross-legged on the water before the Kyuubi's cage as he caught the great beast up on all that had occurred. But I still can't figure out how this all happened. I mean, I thought time travel was impossible, he exclaimed as his arms flailed around above his head. Have you thought to re-examine your memories? Asked Kurama, knowing how scatterbrained the puny flesh bag could be. Well, sort of. It's pretty much all jumbled. Hey, maybe you would remember something I didn't. You were standing over me at the time and might have seen something. Perhaps, allowed Kurama. Try remembering now and we shall see. A contemplative look overcame Naruto's face as he tried to remember back, and almost instantly a change came over his mindscape. Large rectangular shadows suddenly appeared surrounding the cage from the horizon and seemed to speed towards his position. Naruto stood up and backpedaled rapidly until his back met one of the bars as hundreds of enormous black monoliths raced towards him, only to stop just a meter from his feet. The monoliths thus revealed themselves to be the end caps of enormous bookcases, rising above him over double Naruto's height and stretching far off into the distance. Every shelf was packed with scrolls and books with titles such as First Word, Things That Are Green, Clone 174 Memory, and The Battle at Wave. Wah? Asked Naruto intelligently. Looks like these are your memories, Gaki. Much more organized than last time. They used to just ooze out of the walls like puss. Try thinking about that last battle now. Right, the war Madara and Obito. Aha! Exclaimed Naruto as a scroll some 2 rows over began to glow. Walking over, he reached out to grab it. Just as his hand touched the scroll's ribbon, the world changed. It took a disorientating few moments for Naruto to realize that he was looking through what would have been his own eyes at the memory. It was like being a passenger in his own head, like watching a movie. But a movie where he could see, hear, smell, taste, touch and feel everything that was going on. He just didn't have any control over what he was looking at. As Naruto watched, he saw himself send blast after blast towards the reviving Geto statue, only for them to be repelled by Tobi, or rather Obito, using the Sage of 6 Paths, Battle Fan. Resengans, mini Biju bombs, Gai's nunchucks, Kakashi's Kamui, they were all repelled. Just as Octopops and Edo finally forced their way through Obito's defense and through the falling rocks and debris, to land a hit on the Geto statue, Obito manages to erect a wall of defense around it using a flaming Uchiha barrier technique. Naruto tensely watched as he, Guy and Kakashi pulled off their plan to bypass Obito's defense using a combination of the Rasengan and the Kamui, managing to take out his right arm. Feelings of elation filled Naruto's heart as once more he heard Kurama's words of acceptance for him as his partner. Oh, now this is just embarrassing. Isn't there any way to fast forward this thing? Asked a gravelly voice from the back of his mind, somewhat petulantly. Kurama, thought Naruto, you're still here? Well, of course I am, where else would I be? Now concentrate, you don't need to see all this again, think about when Madara arrives. Hey, you're not at Sundara, are you? Asked Naruto suspiciously. Just do it, you useless human. Snarled Kurama through gritted fangs. Okay, no need to growl. Sheesh. Concentrating on the scene before him, Naruto watched as the fighting sped up. There Obito seals Edo with the curse mark. Here Naruto hits Tobi with the Rasengan once more, revealing his identity to be Obito. Followed by mad ranting that makes no sense. Obito then fires a bomb blast dance at them, only to be defended by Kurama, and then Madara drops out of the sky. Alright, play it normally from here. I'm pretty sure whatever sent us back in time happens not long after this. Naruto mentally clenches his fists, as he once more hears of the defeat of the Kages including his Tsunade-bachan. He watches as they manage to free Octopops and 08 from the curse mark and as he himself attacks Madara with a mini Biju bomb who defends himself with the Sage of Six Paths fan, reflecting the attack back at Naruto, while Kakashi goes after Obito. Kakashi, overcome with guilt, is rendered unable to defend himself, and is taken out by a Kamui aimed at his head, which Naruto witnesses out of the corner of his eye as he stands up once more from the previous attack. Pause it here, rumbles Kurama's voice suddenly, jolting him out of the feelings of panic despair that had overtaken his mind. If you look ahead you will see Madara preparing to Kamui with the power of his eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Just behind you and to the left, Obito is preparing to do the same. If I remember correctly, you are currently focusing all of my power through your body, plus your own, and one of your nature clones is about to dispel. I think this is it. Right after the two techniques hit us, there was a flash of white light, and then I was asleep. Sure enough, when Naruto let the scene continue, he felt a rush of intense energy fill his system almost to the point of overflowing just moments before he was hit by the two Kamuis. Pain racked his body as an intense white light filled his vision, and then nothing. Naruto blinked, and the scene disappeared to be replaced with the endless void of his mindscape, his hand still stretched out towards the scroll on the shelf before him, though it was no longer glowing. Huh. He breathed to himself as the shelves receded back into the horizon until they eventually disappeared. Okay, so Biju mode mixed with Sage Chakra, mixed with two Kamuis is enough to send someone back in time. Well, I guess that answers the question of being able to reverse all this. I guess there's no way we could recreate all that, mused Naruto as he walked back to stand before Kurama's cage. Naruto contemplated the seal before him as he said, "You know, I still remember the key. It is only a seal after all. Do you want me to open that for you?" "No, not now. Your body isn't ready for it yet. You would just die and take me with you." Kurama rejected, though a twinkle of amused affection could be seen in his great eye. "Go now, you have your answers and I grow tired. I will probably sleep most of the time anyway, so being in this cage is fine for now. You go and get stronger. We have many challenges ahead of us after all." "Hi. Good night, Kurama. I will see you soon. I will leave my mind open. Talk to me anytime, okay?" Naruto closed his eyes and mentally reached up and out of his mind. When he opened his eyes he was once more beneath the tree on the edge of his training ground. Judging by the sun it was mid-morning. Plenty of time to get some training in. After all, there was no time to waste. What if Naruto has perfect chakra control? And thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel. And leave a like if you guys need the next part. Comment down, and thanks for watching the video, and see you guys in the next video.